Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here as we begin the playoffs for the BackFire Sim Racing. This is race number 11 here in Joliet, Illinois, as we get ready for the first Page Media 200 at the Chicagoland Speedway. I'm Seth Cole, alongside of Anthony McCurry. Anthony, 16 drivers begin their run for the championship, but a little bit different of a playoff system than we're used to because there's really only one round of 4 races, and only 4 drivers are moving on to that final round at the season's end.
Yeah, and then for a lot of these drivers, it's kind of in a position where you got to get some wins and get them quick, because only with the amount of races we have left, there's not a whole lot of opportunity for drivers to really make up some positions in the playoffs. So if you're going to make a move, you got to do it quick. Tonight could be the turning point for some drivers, and it could be the turning point for some drivers that are already high up in the point standings.
We're going to have to see how Chicagoland here tonight plays into the postseason. A lot of times, Chicagoland very well known for its long green flag runs. Tire wear comes into play. Pit strategy comes into play. And more often than not, pit road plays more of a factor than the on-track action at a track like this. We mentioned 16 drivers are locked into the playoffs. About 3 or 4 of them are locked in through victories, but the other 12 are locked in through pointing their way in the first 10 races. Christopher Lawrence, DJ Daniel, Matthew Robinson, they have all gotten in due to wins they had this season. Kyle Gartner, Corey Saucier, Zachary Woods, Angel Santiago, J.R. Miller, Jordan Stencil, Jeremy Richmond, James Jones, Noah Owens, Chris Hubka, and Brock Silvani. They all pointed their way in. Now, we were kind of left on a bit of a cliffhanger last week after, well, actually 2 weeks ago, I should say, after the regular season finale at Daytona, because Ryan Phillips and James Santoyo, they were tied for the final position. We already knew heading into Daytona that Kyle Spees was not going to be a part of the playoffs. Well, apparently, we end up finding out that Bud Barnes, who also was inside the top 16 in points, he is actually not going to be in the playoffs either. So Lady Luck smiled and said, hey, Ryan Phillips, James Santoyo, you're both in. So both of them get to battle for the championship here in the next 4 races.
And that's going to be critical for someone that comes into this playoff, such as James Santoyo, because he didn't make the start the last time these drivers were out for a points paying race. It was back at Daytona 2 weeks ago. So a little bit of luck will go a long way. We'll have to see what he does with it. He's mired pretty far down in points, though. So we'll have to see what he can do to get back up and maybe snipe away a top 4 spot. It's going to be a bit of an uphill climb, but not impossible for that driver.
Let's go down for pre-race ceremonies, and let's take it to Pastor Zach Woods for today's invocation.
Almighty God, I thank you for this time that we get to spend here on iRacing tonight. I thank you for the friends we get to meet while we come together this evening. And Lord, let our words and our racing be fruitful and beneficial unto you. And we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
And let's now go trackside for tonight's singing of the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched
4 laps of racing here today at Chicagoland Speedway. Matthew Robinson going to line up on the pole for today's event. Playoff contender alongside of his teammate Brock Silvati. We're going to take you through the rest of your starting grid as these drivers are getting ready to go green. Pretty easy to tell the playoff drivers opposed from the others with that bright green spoiler, splitter, and driver banner. We'll keep you abreast of all of your playoff contenders are running as we're ready to go racing here tonight at Chicagoland. Matthew Robinson, now his teammate DJ Daniel going to slot into second with Brock Silvati in third, so all three teammates line up in the podium positions. And this is going to be interesting to watch with these guys because we also know that Jeremy Richmond, a teammate to the 99. Oh, hang on a second. Big wiggle there out of Matthew Robinson through 3 and 4. That car wicked loose and a tremendous save.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cars that have been a little bit loose on the opening lap. I saw back there the 34 of Morris that was also loose going through turns 1 and 2. Still a lot of drivers trying to file their way in line, but so far at the front of the field, everyone's gotten away. But at the back of the field, it's a very different story, as I believe that's the 88 of Owens that just got loose coming out of 2. Now they're 3 wide going down the back straightaway. It could get a little hairy if they go 3 wide, which they have done, but looks like they might try to settle it out, and they do, although Owens gets a piece of the apron, still going the wrong direction as the 88.
Yeah, very loose is Noah Owens as he is going to drop back outside of the top 20, giving way to several playoff contenders. James Jones going around on the outside, Chris Hubka there as well. I believe there are 2 drivers in the field that are playoff contenders that are not marked out, not bedecked in the neon green colors that people should be aware of. The 49 of Kyle Gartner and I believe the 9 of Christopher Lawrence. They are playoff contenders, but just to keep everybody aware, they are battling for the championship. You just can't quite tell them apart from everybody else.
Although Gartner's car, you can probably tell it's in the playoffs by the way.
The whole car.
It's very green. The whole car. He decided that the whole car should be green to celebrate being in the playoffs. So look out for that 49 machine running in 12th place at the moment. Christopher Lawrence, not so well at the moment, running in 17th right now, trying to find his way back to the front. Now, Lawrence comes into this race having quite a few wins under his belt, too, so he's one of the top drivers to look out for. In fact, the top 3 going into this race were Lawrence, Daniel, and Robinson, so looking out for these drivers who have gotten a lot of wins so far this season. One of them's leading the race as DJ Daniel leads the way over Brock Silvati, but so far on the opening few laps, it's been chaotic. We still got some 3 wide racing at the back of the pack between what is, I believe, Anderson, Cato, and McCade running very close proximity to each other.
Patrick McQuaid in the 73 actually making his first start of the season here tonight in the playoffs. We got a couple of other drivers as well making their debuts. I believe that if I can find him here in the running order, there was another driver that was new to my list, and I'm missing it right now. I'll see if I can find it here. Might have actually been a driver that didn't take the green, because I'm actually noticing we had 30 drivers that were scheduled to take the green, and actually only 28 of them actually started this race. So it might have actually been a driver that came in for practice but did not actually start tonight's event. Now, you mentioned about DJ Daniel and Christopher Lawrence. Those are a couple of drivers that are winners coming into these playoffs. If you're just joining us here at this portion of the season, only 3 drivers made into the playoffs with wins. DJ Daniels had victories at Las Vegas, a track that's very familiar to Chicagoland. Also Darlington and Charlotte Motor Speedway. Caution is out, so I'll get to those other stats in a moment. Playoff contender Angel Santiago is upside down on the back straightaway.
Not only that, but Lawrence is around on the back straightaway as well. We've got the 5, the 2 involved as well. So Hubka and Gene Cato spun around. Looks like multiple cars were involved. And I want to bet that this might have taken place back where a lot of these drivers were running 2 and 3 wide. Maybe not so happy with the way that their cars were handling. And it did look like contact might have been the reason why everybody went around. Although the back straightaway, kind of an interesting place for it to happen. You wouldn't normally think it would happen there, although I feel like it started maybe coming out of 2 is when it's all started.
Oh, yeah, looks like maybe a disagreement on room. That was Kinsler, I believe. The 25 that was to the outside of Christopher Lawrence. Hard to tell from that angle if the 25 came down or if the 9 came up. Maybe a little bit of both. Nowhere for Chris Hubka to go, and we're going to drop back and look at the replay again to see how the 90 of Angel Santiago ended up on his lid.
I think that he might have gotten scooped up going down the back straightaway. I think it looked like it was a shot. It actually looks like he got stopped by the 25 of Chrysler, and then Gene Cato came in and kind of wedged his car and then shot him up into the air using the back straightaway wall as a bit of an anchor. So that's a very interesting way to go up. And then, I don't know who that was. I think that was the one that came in with a late hit. So Modespuck came in with a late hit on Cato.
Very strange hit to send that 90 machine up in the air. Almost kind of like a seal with a circus ball, like a performance trick at the circus or at like SeaWorld or something. I mean, the 90 was kind of up in the air when the 2 came and hit him. I think his left sides were off the ground, but just the amount of air that he got, I mean, that car was about 3-4 feet off of the racing surface and then up and onto its lid. And the tough break there for Angel Santiago is there's more than likely going to end up being maybe 1 or 2 drivers that could point their way into the Final Four in the season finale at Homestead Miami Speedway, and it's all about momentum. You want to get those playoffs started out with the best momentum possible. Even if it's not a win, you want to be up in the top 5. You can't finish in the top 5, you want to be in the top 10, but you don't want to start it off with a DNF.
Absolutely not, especially the fact that all these points got reset when the playoffs started. So drivers that had barely made their way in, we talk about Santoyo, drivers that barely made their way into the playoffs, they have the opportunity now to really capitalize and get a good finish, perhaps maybe snipe their way to a top 4. Now, the downside for Santoyo is that he didn't make the start tonight, so yes, he did. He's running in 4th place. So, speaking to Santoyo, he's running in 4th place. That could potentially be something that he might be able to carry the momentum over, because of the top 5, you've got a lot of championship contenders running in it. You've got Daniel leading. You've got Salvati, who's running in here as well. And there's a few other drivers that are mired down in the points when they came into this race. They might be coming out the beneficiary after only 1 race, although we still have a long way to go. It's looking pretty good for those 2 drivers.
Every driver involved in that incident came to pit road, have returned to the racetrack, although David Modespa finds himself 1 lap down. Angel Santiago is 2 laps down, and we'll have to see how off the pace he might be after the extensive contact he sustained with his flip on the backstretch. Lap 11 about to go on the board. First restart of the day. We saw what happened with cold tires on the initial drop of the green flag. We'll see if they have to deal with that loose condition again here into turn 1.
Certainly looked like Morrison had a little bit of a wheel spin or something happened to his car, because he darted down to the inside and almost ran into Salvati, but got it cleared, and we're going through turns 2. Slides up, does Morrison. Almost got contact from James Santoyo, which is the driver that we were just mentioning. Coming into this race, he came in to the playoffs, the last position in the playoffs, 16 out of 16. So for him to be battling up here in the top 5 right now is something that he needs to do consistently if he wants to point his way into the playoff or the Final Four. Almost didn't make it, but as Seth alluded to at the beginning of the program, it was basically a miracle that he made it into the playoffs, and now doing what he needs to do is capitalize, and he's got a couple of other drivers with him that we've already mentioned. Salvati is one of them. Another driver is J.R. Miller, running in 6th place. He's way down in the running order, or about midway in the running order when the points got reset. Also one of those drivers we wouldn't really expect to maybe point his way into the Final Four, but stranger things have happened, and there's a car around right behind them. I think that was Anderson.
I think you are correct. 7 of Josh Anderson going to bring out the second caution of the day. There's another car badly damaged. That's Gene Cato. And I think that's the 73, Patrick McQuaid, making his debut here tonight. And it may be a very short one, as that car couldn't even get refired over in the middle of turns 1 and 2.
And Anderson is smoking coming down the back straightaway, and it's a big plume of black and white smoke. Not a great sign if you're trying to get to the end of a race, but A lot of drivers came piling into this one. There was just no time to stop, and it was in an awkward part of the track. You can't really slow down when you're going into a high-speed turn such as turn 1. Not really enough time to really get the car woed up in an orderly fashion, or you'll end up spinning. But there was a lot of hard shots this time around.
I'm not 100% certain, but I think that might have actually started with the 64 of Jordan Stencil. I think he kind of came down and chopped across the nose of the 73 of Patrick McQuaid. Now, we saw there with that shot that Josh Anderson, was actually loose on the apron on the front straightaway, had that shallow entry into turn 1, but I think if we go back, I think you'll see it was the 64 kind of cutting down the entrance of turn 1 that initiated the contact that started that wreck.
Doesn't even know. I don't even think he knew that he was down at the inside. I think he just came down thinking he was going to be clear, but definitely not the case, as drivers behind him were quick to find out. Jeremy Richmond came in and absolutely took the side off of the 70. I believe that was the 73 that went flying in the air, and that was incredible that McQuaid was able to at least get landed, but that car is definitely done for. A lot of other drivers, the 10 was involved as well, of James Jones. The 2, again, Gene Cato came in and piled in at the last second, so lots of casualties as a result of this one.
How about playoff contender Kyle Gartner? Watch as he maneuvers the 49 through, gets a little contact, is able to keep it straight. I mean, that's an amazing job of keeping your playoff hopes alive.
There's no way that there is any man alive that was planning to do that, but he certainly figured out a way to get through that. You can give the good hands award to him already. That was quite some piece of driving that he pulled off. Seth, when you get into these situations, especially the playoff drivers, you know that they want to make sure that they get to the end of a race, but there's been a lot of times early on in this race where some of these playoff drivers have been in some precarious positions, and I don't think they want to be in them, but certainly seems like some of these drivers are finding themselves in a bad place early on. Something to do with the racing, the amount of maybe this track, the way the setup of the cars, they're not handling correctly. Do you think that that's weighing on them? And they know that they have to get to the front of the field, but they also know they need to make it to the end of the race, and already a few of our playoff contenders run into problems. What does that set the tone for the rest of the playoffs? Only being so short, there's not a whole lot of time to make up some ground if something like this happens early on.
I'm wondering if maybe these drivers are the mentality coming into the Chicagoland race of kind of a must-win situation, because if you kind of look at the other tracks that we're going to be going to this season, some of them are up in the air in terms of whether or not you may find it as a strong point. This is really, with the exception of Kentucky, which is kind of an entity all to its own, of a 1.5-mile track that these drivers are going to be dealing with until we get to that season finale at Homestead, Miami. So I think a lot of drivers, as we just saw there with the triple-digit track conditions, the track temperature of 101, I think that more than likely what we got to do, or what these drivers feel that they have to do, is that they actually have to possibly approach this as an opportunity, an early opportunity to get that monkey off their back, get the pressure off of their back, and make it into the playoffs.
Yeah, and if they can do that, then all's well and all's well, but you have to get to the end of these races, and the way that these drivers have been racing, the triple-digit track tips, like you mentioned, they're not helping these drivers at all. And what I've noticed is a lot of these drivers, looks like they've set their car up for a shorter run, almost anticipating that there's going to be a couple more cautions than maybe enough to get into a green flag run. So that being said, they might have their car set up to be loose so they can get to the front in a short order. However, that's going to kind of bite them if they have a long run, which we had a pretty long run at the beginning of the race, and I noticed some drivers start to fall off. A couple of those drivers that did have early problems that are making some headway back through the field. The 88 of Noah Owens, we saw him with a very loose race car, almost wrecking loose, but now he's found his way back in up towards the top 10, running around 10th or 11th position at the moment. When they cross the line, we'll see what he can do. But it shows that maybe these opening laps might be a little bit of a nuance to what we're going to see later on. Maybe these drivers start out free, end up going into a bit of a tighter car for a longer run. But we'll have to wait and find out. We got a lot of laps to go.
David Modesbaugh was the free pass car under this caution. 22 drivers will be on the lead lap of 27 that are on the track running. Clifford Corbeau came down pit road a couple of laps ago, has not returned to the track since. Green flag back in the air. See several divers fanning up there to the top side. I think that's more so wheel spin or maybe a reaction to wheel spin ahead of them than anything else.
One driver that didn't want to go to the high side was the 97 of Salvati. He wanted to be as close to the inside as possible, almost rubbing doors with Santoyo. Now almost rubbing doors with Robinson. That car does not look any way drivable at the moment. They're 3 wide. That could have been bad, but the 24 of Saucier backs out of it. A veteran move by the 24 as well. He knew he couldn't hold it. Backs out of the 3 wide situation. Now will set his sights on the 99 of Robinson.
Great run right there for the 34 of Simon Morrison. You touched on him earlier. He's a non-playoff contender, mixing it up with all of these green splitters and spoilers around him. Morrison finished out the regular season 24th in the standings, so there was no way he was able to point his way in. Oh, makes a contact there with Salvati, sends him up the track. That's one thing that these drivers that are not donning the neon green have to be aware of, that there's a championship on the line for others. But, you know, I like this type of racing, though. Don't go out there and roll over for the playoff contenders. You want to finish out the season with a victory just as much as they do.
There's another driver that's popping up through the field that might have something to say about that as well, and that's the 3 of James Cato. He's not in the playoffs either, and he's showing himself to be a bit of a fast driver earlier on in the race. He's now to the underside of Kyle Gartner in the all-green 49. You can definitely tell that he's in the playoffs, but he's mixing it up with these playoff contenders. He's going by Gardner. He's about to get past Woods. He got Salvati in front of him, and he's going in the right direction, so he might be a factor for the lead of the race very soon.
You kind of wonder what if for James Cato, because he is only making his 4th start of the season here tonight. But 3 weeks ago, when we were at Texas, he took the checkered flag there. Of course, Daytona is a bit of a crapshoot, but he actually was up at the front quite a bit in that regular season finale. Then last week at Charlotte Motor Speedway for the All-Star race, he won his heat, had to start at the back of the pack with an inverted field, and did the last to first challenge to take that checkered flag. So if you're looking at a driver that's got momentum, look no further than the 3.
And it came at a very similar track. One of his wins did at to this track, a 1.5 mile track. Although Texas and this track are very different in the sense that this track kind of more akin to a more rounded Las Vegas, as you mentioned earlier. Still, his 1.5 mile package is one of the better ones on the racetrack for the drivers that don't make the most amount of starts. So we'll have to see if he can move his way up. Although another driver that's not in the hunt for the championship is the 21 of Vickery. He's coming up to try and battle for a top 10 spot. The 3 right in front of him. So this is a bit of a mix with the playoff contenders and the non-championship contenders as well.
There's the 8 diving to the inside there of Ryan Sizemore, another non-playoff contender. You got Kyle Gartner as well as J.R. Miller and Noah Owens in this mix as well. Also the 10 of James Jones, who had that runner-up finish at Texas a few weeks ago. He's up there inside of the top 15. Up towards the front, battle's going to be for 6th place, side by side. So Vadi's on the inside of the 34 of Morrison. Remember what happened earlier when the roles were reversed, but no contact between the two there out of turn 2.
TJ Roberts and Zachary Woods now battling side by side for what is the 6th place position, although Savate is going to make that the 7th position, but Savate is now trying to defend his 6th place from these 2 drivers, and they gotta say that Savate, ever since the restart, doesn't seem like his car is really going the way he wants to. He's driving it pretty deep into the turns, running a bit of a more mid-groove than these other drivers are, almost like his car isn't turning basically it's all is the way he wants to, and right a little bit up the high side of the racetrack, got a bit of the wall to the inside of these drivers, goes TJ Roberts to take the position away from Salvati. So not looking good for the 97. Wonder if there might be something knocked a little loose on that car, or something that's just not quite right with the 97.
Well, he didn't get the wall when he and Morrison made that contact. He was able to back off the throttle just enough that he made the turn without making contact with the outside safer barrier. But maybe that slide that he had up 2-3 grooves to the wall might have actually heated up his tires. I mentioned the fact that track's going to be very slick out there, up in the triple digits of 101 degrees, and this is an open setup league. You know, loose is fast and on the edge of out of control, so maybe these drivers have themselves loose setups, and a slide like that could end up having your car very ill handling for the remainder of the run.
Bit of dirt track racing on a mile-and-a-half oval, you know? That's basically what it comes down to when you race at these high temperatures. And some of these drivers, you know, they're used to to racing like that sometimes. And you know, some of these drivers might be better on dirt than they are on asphalt, and they could definitely show their ability. Although right now, Salvati's still going the wrong way. Is J.R. Miller now going to take a position away from him? But towards the front, we were talking about him earlier on in the day, and it still stands true. James Salvati, or make that Santoyo, James Santoyo, knows what he needs to do in order to punch his way into the Final Four. After barely making it into the playoffs, he's running second, although he's got a bit of a challenge right now from Corey Saucier, who's caught him up and now trying to make the pass on the inside, now to the outside. Doesn't look like there's really anywhere for the 24 to go at the minute.
Hey, the thing of it is, too, when we were kind of speculating a couple weeks ago at Daytona who was in, who was out, you know, we were looking at the statistics between Ryan Phillips and James Santoyo, and between the two of them, the advantage would have gone to the 43 because he had a top 5 and 2 top 10s to James Santoyo's only 2 top 10s this season. So talk about making the most of an opportunity when it's given to you, and as soon as we see him battling with Saucier, he's going to nearly lose on the front straightaway. The wall's going to save him, but that's going to drop him back outside the top 10 at least.
And he's gonna park it in the middle of the racetrack, and the 10 didn't get slowed in enough time, and now everyone's piled in on the turn 1. This is what you didn't need to have happen if you were trying to make it into the Final Four.
Playoff contenders James Jones and Zachary Woods were involved in that one. There is the 60 with the damage to the front end. And there is the 10 car, who I believe was the one made the contact into the left rear over in turn 1, sending the 79 around.
21 of Vickery also came in and kind of got caught up in all of this. And that, I got to be honest with you, I don't think the 10 knew that he was slow was Santoyo. That looked to me like when they were coming through, he moved up the track, kind of maybe not knowing that he was there, maybe going for a move. Unfortunately, there was a slow car at the outside of the racetrack, and Santoyo was losing it on the front straightaway. I'm surprised that he was able to keep it together. A good piece of driving on his part. But man, this is such an unfortunate way to go out. The 88 also came in and got some damage after he ran into Santoyo as well. So Owens with quite a bit of damage on the front end.
It's hard to tell if there was contact there between the 24 and the 79 or not. It certainly appears so because the 79 shot up to the outside wall really quickly. Oh, you know what I think happened right there? I think that James Jones was behind the 49 of Gartner, didn't even see the 79 up ahead, and then when the 49 moved low, there was nowhere for James Jones to be able to go.
You can't really see out of these cars sometimes the way that you drive. It's very hard to see when you're battling, especially. So I do agree with you. I think that he just flat out didn't see him. I'm right on board with him to see what he might have saw. Yeah, I don't think it registered that he was slow at all. Maybe he was loose. It looked like he was slowing up, but certainly the closing rate was much more significant than he thought because, yeah, he never let up. Not at all.
You see on board with Jones. There's Vickery. Oh, wow, that is a shot for the 21 to the outside wall. Who was that went flying through? I'm not certain. Might have maybe been the 64 of Jordan Stencil, but they were loose out of turn 2, flying through the wreckage, and I don't think they got any contact. So some of these drivers kind of evil Knieveling it through these wrecks and going for the ultimate risk reward, as Ryan Sizemore will be staying out to lead a lap here, but we might see him on pit road this next time. He may actually be playing some strategy, as I think it was only about 14 laps since our last caution, so we'll see if he's actually going to stay out and lead us back to the green flag. But the list of playoff contenders involved in our first 3 wrecks, Anthony, continues to pile up. Angel Santiago was involved in a wreck along with Chris Hubka and Noah Owens. Jordan Stencil got a piece of the second incident, and now we can add Zachary Woods and also James Jones to this third incident. So we've got about 6 or 7 playoff contenders that have sustained early damage, and we've still got over 100 laps to go.
You can add the 88 of Owens to that list as well, as he came in and plowed into into Santoyo at the end of all of that just happened. So a lot of drivers that did come into this race with high hopes, and we're at the front of the field. Like we mentioned, Santoyo was running in second, and then the commentator's curse struck again and ended up a cavalcade of stuff that happened going down the front straightaway and into turn one. But there are a few drivers that didn't make it through all that. Cody Saucier saw it happen out of turn 4, and he was able to get around. He might restart in second place if Sizemore doesn't come down, and Sizemore doesn't look like he is going to come down. So it's going to be Sizemore, Saucier, Roberts, make that TJ Roberts, Simon Morrison, and James Cato. So a very different looking top 5 as some of these drivers decided to come down pit road, including our leader at the time, DJ Daniel, was going to restart in 11th. So we'll have to see what fresh tires versus old tires do. I have a feeling that the fresh tires are going to be much quicker than the old tires. We have a couple drivers that stayed out under that last exchange, including who I believe is Chris Hupka in the 5 with a very torn up looking car on the front end. So we'll have to see what he can do with that bit of bodywork missing on the front.
I was actually watching him on that last run, and despite the fact that his entire front grille is exposed, it looks like that car is fairly up to speed. Had some good straightaway speed, was holding off the drivers around him, maintaining pace. So that car may look like it's been in a demolition derby, but it might still be competitive to stay up here inside of the top 10. We'll have to wait and see. Ryan Sizemore was the only driver that stayed out under that caution of the drivers on the lead lap. Corey Saucier on back. They will have fresh tires here for this restart. We're going to have 19 drivers on the lead lap. Christopher Lawrence, the last of those. And it looks like everybody is coming back around here to receive this green flag. Some a lap down, some 2 laps down, and Clifford Corbeau is -3 to race leader Ryan Sizemore, who gets us back underway. 100 laps even left to go at Chicagoland.
And now the outside looks like it's going to get an advantage with those cars being on fresh tires. Saucier trying to get around. I don't think the outside of the racetrack is a good place to try to make passes, but looks like Saucier might make me eat my words as he gets a slingshot coming out of turn 2. He's got some help behind him in the form of make that Morrison. Morrison trying. Goodness gracious, he's loose. He saved it, does Morrison. Morrison trying to hold on to it out of 4, still sideways slightly, but going down the front straightaway now has got it caught up, but that could have been disastrous, and it is disastrous for the 34 as he gets clipped, goes around, and everyone piles in. It's another massive crash going into turn 1.
Upka and Jones involved. Shane Ledoux in the 91 spinning around.
Just the list goes on.
Christopher Lawrence, I think he was coasting his way through the incident. Second wreck tonight that Chris Hubka has been a part of. And that's at least the third incident I can think of, Anthony, that we've had a wreck take place up inside of the top 10. The wrecks are taking place at the front, and those drivers mid-pack to the rear of the field, they're having nowhere to go.
Especially you're at full song going down the front straightaway. There's no way that you're going to slow down in enough time because you're lifting to go through turn 1. You never really hit the brakes at this track. It's more or less a kind of a coast your way through the turns type of track. So the fact that it happens so far down the front straightaway and the back straightaway leads me to think that these drivers, they simply just don't have enough time to slow down. And we were talking about Hubka with his front end missing and how that would affect his car. Well, I think it's going to affect him a lot more now that he's got quite a bit more damage. The 64 came in. That was Jordan Stencil and punted the 91 back up into the 34, being Shane Ledoux, make that. But just Seth, the list, it gets bigger for these drivers, and unfortunately, because it happens at the front of the field, it gets bigger quicker.
Like another driver we can add to the list involved in that was the 25 of Zachary Kitzler. He was 1 lap down at the time. I believe the lucky dog under this caution is going to be the 79 of James Santoyo, so he'll be back on the lead lap. That will leave only 2 of our playoff contenders right now that are 1 or more laps down. Zachary Woods right now -1, and Angel Santiago, who we already documented his incident bringing out the first caution of the night, right now 2 laps down. All the rest of your 14 playoff contenders right now are running and on the lead lap. Corey Saucier in the 24, the highest of those currently in the race lead.
Hey, what? Saucier's strategy might not be to stay out in front because he wants track position in order to keep the lead. He doesn't want to be back there where the crashes are happening. He might be slower in the short or in the long run, but if he can keep getting this momentum on the restarts, he might have a good strategy here if he can make it to the next round of pit stops that we have coming up in 20 or so laps. So I don't know. To me, the danger spot is back where all those drivers are, and it didn't seem to matter if you had fresh tires or not, because we saw just now that it was more or less just a loosened situation for Morrison, not really anything else. So I don't know. I guess the track temps are to blame for it. It just seems to me that no one's been able to get the power down in these restarts and continue the momentum. Although I think what would happen to him is that Morrison just didn't know he wasn't clear and came up the track. But still, it's scary to watch these drivers sometimes when they get loose and try to correct it.
What we've seen with these restarts, it's kind of in terms of strategy between a rock and a hard place. Do you want to go into turn 1 with cool, fresh tires, which we know are going to be slick, or do you want to go into turn 1 on worn, cool tires? Because it kind of seems like whichever one you choose, you're going to have the back end hanging out and be trying to catch that thing at least for the first couple of laps.
It's almost a time in the or time where these drivers would really want to have tire blankets so they could throw the tires in before you put them on during your pit stops. That way you have nice and snugly warm tires when you hit the racetrack, because what they're doing right now is not in the most bit comfortable, and it's amazing that they're able to hold on to it as well as they can. And I want to imagine that a lot of the tire problems these drivers are having late in the run is due to the tire problems they have early in the run. So no matter what you do, it seems like it's going the wrong direction. But we're going to get the green flag on lap 41 of 134. Corey Saucier still leading the way. TJ Roberts now in second place. James Cato, Matthew Robinson, and Jeremy Richmond shows himself in the top 5 in that 98 machine. And DJ Daniel did pick up a few spots. He now restarts in 6th place. So Seth, on this restart, are we looking at more of the same, or are we going to see if these drivers might want to tame it down a little bit to try and get around until their tires are at least up to temperature? Because we've seen once they're up to temperature, they're pretty fast and they can battle side by side, but it's those opening few laps that are the real trouble spots.
I mean, here's the thing. In my opinion, that last restart looked relatively tame, and then we saw what happened with Simon Morrison. So I think that these drivers, it's just going to all be about give and take here. You know, if they're having an issue, they've got to give that communication to the other drivers around them. Hey, give me some room. I might be getting loose. I might be coming up a groove and a half. But I've seen a lot of drivers that are trying to keep their track position. They've run the risk of pinching down the driver on the inside as best they can in the corners. And if that driver below them gets loose, who knows? You could be going around with them. We'll see if they're going to play the risk-reward game here, or if we'll be able to get ourselves into another long green flag run. So far, we've had 18 laps be the longest run we've had so far here tonight, as Corey Saucier gets us back underway, and we might be 3 wide into turn 1. James Cato was on it, and he's going to go to the point before we even get to turn 2.
Hitting it down to the inside was the 3 right against the white line, and it benefits him as he gets the lead of the race. And now I think we're seeing the old tires of the 24 start to really pay in the wrong direction for him. Although there's a car that gets loose. I think that was Roberts that got loose. He holds on to it somehow, going down the front straightaway. That looked awfully like what happened to Morrison, but this time he holds on to it. Make sure you're clear. Keep it to the inside of the racetrack as he's done. And we get out of it. So that's what you got to do. Just hold the wheel straight and hope for the best.
Had another car that was almost on the apron there through 1 and 2. I think that might have been the 8 of Ryan Sizemore, but he is making forward progress on that inside line. Oh, we got the paint grip just a little bit there again. Almost drifted up into J.R. Miller. Simon Morrison back there against the wall. We're almost 4 wide on the front straightaway here at Chicagoland.
Another driver that's having some problems is the 49 of Gardner. He's not been going well ever since the restart. He actually got a little bit stacked up at the restart, got ran into the back of. There's quite a bit of damage on the back end, which isn't going to help him in the aerodynamics world, but somehow holding on to it as he was wicked loose going down the front straightaway, almost made contact. How about the 1 of Modespa coming back up through the field after being involved in a couple of crashes, including the first one of the day? Now finds himself battling for a 12th place position on the outside of Jordan Stencil, so a pretty good recovery drive for the 1 machine.
Definitely. Same for Jordan Stencil. He's gotten bits and pieces of a couple of incidents here tonight. Nothing that's given him major damage, but he has been in the vicinity of a couple of incidents right now in that 12th spot. Further up towards the front of the field, though, we've got ourselves a heck of a battle for second. DJ Daniel starting to reel in Corey Saucier. He's bringing Matthew Robinson along with him. And, you know, it's interesting if we look up here at Corey Saucier, because I was going to make the point about him and Kyle Gartner. Those are 2 drivers that went into the regular season finale at Daytona, locked into the playoffs. They are the first and second highest drivers in the point standings that had not won. DJ Daniel, Matthew Robinson, and Christopher Lawrence were the only 3 drivers that advanced into the playoffs with race wins under their belts.
Yeah, and being in that pretty exclusive class of drivers who have won races this season will make you feel good going into this. But these drivers that were so close to the front of the field in terms of points that hadn't had a win, it also has to feel good knowing that you had the consistency to stay up with the guys who have won races. So knowing that these drivers, they come in with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They want to get that first win of the season. They're locked into the playoffs. Came into this race 5th place did Saucier, and Gardner came into this race 4th place. And we have a yellow.
Ryan Phillips on the back straightaway in that U.S. Air Force Ford. Or make that actually a Chevrolet. He's looped it around out of turn 2. I didn't see any other drivers around the area. I don't know if there was contact between him and another car, or maybe just got loose, maybe hit the wall. We'll go back and see, but another of our playoff contenders involved. So we are 5 cautions into tonight's event.
And this one, I'm looking at it, might have been quite a bit of contact. His car did not seem to be... I mean, he just kind of tracked up the racetrack, and I think he might have had some help with the 21. I think those 2 had a little meeting of the mind. Ooh, might have gotten some airborne, did the 43.
Well, he is driving a U.S. Air Force car, so...
Yeah, it fits the bill.
Off into the wild blue yonder there. That was Jeffrey Vickery in the 21. That looked eerily similar to our first caution of the night when we saw Lawrence kind of drift up the track into another car. And I don't know if that's just a case of trying to self-clear off of the corner, or we know that how loose these cars are early on. It might be a case of trying to counter-steer the car off the corner so the back end doesn't step out, and when you're counter-steering the car to the right, guess which direction the car is going to go? To the right. And unfortunately, there was a car to the outside, so I'm not sure which case there was for the 43, but nonetheless, he's got damage, as does Vickery, which that certainly doesn't help him, as he was already a lap down with damage from an earlier incident.
It also kind of looks like that Phillips might have been trying to save his car in the middle of turn 2, and then after he got it saved, it didn't turn to the left. It just kind of plowed up to the outside of the racetrack, which if the 21 of Vickery wasn't there, it would not have been a problem, but because he was there, he did end up making contact. Almost had that save too, but then the second shot from Vickery really sent him around. Drivers, some of them came down pit road, some of them not really related to the incident, although TJ Roberts came down pit road after he was wicked loose the last couple of restarts. The 9 of Lawrence came down pit road, and a couple of others. One drivers that didn't stay out is our leader, Corey Saucier, which still hasn't, well, he has made a stop, I guess, since then, so he is now on the same stint as everybody else. But still, good strategy on the part of this 24 machine.
Well, he might have been able to fool you, Anthony, but he didn't fool the cameraman here. James Cato just brought his machine to pit road from the race lead. You gotta wonder what the strategy is for him. He's giving up a lot of track position. He'll be restarting back around the 17th, 18th position to take on some fresh Goodyears.
So something is amiss on the 3. He's very slow. You see the way? Oh, he might just be at the tail end of the field saving gas, but that I don't. Given the way that the race has gone on so far, I don't know if I necessarily agree with this strategy. Being so far back, he's going to restart in 18th if everything stands the way it is. I don't know if you run the risk of going that far back, does James Cato. It certainly had one of the faster cars on the racetrack, so you'd think that he'd want to stay up there, but obviously he's thinking about something we don't. Maybe he's gotten thinking about it, and the fuel mileage, he might be thinking long run. He might be trying to stretch it the rest of the way, maybe on one stop or maybe a stop and a half. So, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I'm wondering about this call.
Here's the thing, too. He's not in the playoffs. He's not battling for a championship. So he, in a way, has the luxury of making that rather unorthodox call. As you said, he probably knows something that we don't. He's willing to put himself back there in traffic, feels he's got a fast enough car to make his way up there, but if he gets caught up in a wreck while trying somewhat outside the box strategy, at least he knows at the end of the night he's not going to lose a championship trophy.
That is true. He like you said, he doesn't come in with the weight of having to fight for a championship, so maybe it's time to stop some moves, Maybe try to figure out to your point, an unorthodox way to win a race. So I'll be surprised if we see him back in the front, but he's got fresh tires, so he might try to figure out a way to get back up to the front of the field and pretty quickly. Speaking of the front of the field, it's Corey Saucier at the front. DJ Daniel finds his way back to second place, and then it's Robinson, Richmond, Sizemore, Salvati, your top 6. As we get ready to put them back underway on lap 51 of 134. Still quite a ways to go in this race, and a lot of questions to be answered as far as what our playoffs will look like when we head into next week. Green flag will be coming out, a delayed green flag this time, but we're back racing. And the 24, I don't know if he didn't get going or the 99 got a better jump, but there was almost some contact, a bit of pushing going down the front straightaway.
That'd have been I believe that's Jeremy Richmond up on the top side trying to push his teammate Matthew Robinson to go towards the front and might have lifted his rear tires off the ground. Saucier going to get out into that clean air. DJ Daniel, though, going to close in the second position. And this is the guy I think we got to keep our eyes on because, as I mentioned, of all the tracks they've gone to previously this season, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, another 1.5-mile track, has to be the closest in configuration, and that was a venue where DJ Daniel picked up one of his 3 wins during the regular season.
And he's got a very strong car tonight as well. You can tell he knows how to get around this track extremely well, as he's been running a line very dissimilar to pretty much the majority of the field, kind of opting for a low to mid line. Now plants it right against the white line going through turn 3 and 4. He's got to run too. You could tell that he knows how to make the inside line work. A lot of these drivers are struggling on the inside line, but he's not one of them. Right up to the back end of the 24, and he's got his teammate right behind him as well. So you might think that the 2 teammates might try to pounce a little bit. You can see right there another case in point. Daniel goes up the racetrack, although his teammate says, I'm battling for a championship too. I'm not going to go easy on you.
Yeah, Matthew Robinson, a 3-time winner this season as well in the regular season, winning the season opener at Daytona International Speedway, followed it up with back-to-back wins later on at both Indianapolis and the short track of Bristol Motor Speedway, and now he will slot into the second position in front of teammate DJ Daniel, and I'm just watching a little bit nervously back here around the 7th, 8th, 9th position. That's where you find Jeremy Richmond, David Modesbaugh, Kyle Gartner, because there's been a little bit of contact exchanged back here in the last couple of laps.
Neither has, and even further back, you got J.R. Miller, Noah Owens, T.J. Roberts. They've been duking it out as well, and they're side-by-side back there between the 88 and the 11. As now the 3, we were talking about how fast he was going to be on the restart. Well, I think we're now seeing what the benefit of fresh tires versus old tires are, because Kato is on a bit of a tear right now, going to the inside of the racetrack, trying to get around all these slower traffic. He might be the fastest car. In fact, he is the fastest car on the racetrack. It's just a matter of getting back up to the front of the field. But that strategy call might have been a pretty good one for this 3 team. Whoa, there was contact in front of them, though.
And that's TJ Roberts and JR Miller making said contact, as Cato's going to try and jump to the outside of the both of them and kill 2 birds with 1 stone before they get to turn 1. He will stay alongside of the 78 of Miller for the 10th position. Restarted back in 17th to James Cato, and I just want to update. I said that Santoyo was the lucky dog 2 cautions ago. That information was incorrect. Zachary Woods was actually the lucky dog 2 cautions ago. Last caution, it was Zachary Kinsler back on the lead lap. So Santoyo, Josh Anderson, and Jeffrey Vickery, they are still 1 lap down. Angel Santiago, Patrick McQuaid, Gene Cato, they are 2 laps down. Clifford Corveau, -3, 5 laps down for James Jones, so he will be looking for a comeback run next week at Iowa. And Shane Ledoux, right now 17 laps down and still on pit road. So 27 cars on the lead lap. Right now, 19 of them on the lead lap.
And so a lot of these drivers, with the exception rather of Ledoux, still running on the racetrack. There's a driver that's running very slowly, and that's Gene Cato in the 2 machine. He has had a interesting opening few laps of this race. Has found his way into a lot of other crashes that weren't caused by him. He just found himself in the receiving end of a blocked racetrack and not enough time to slow down. He runs very slowly off the pace. In fact, he is in he's in a threatening position of being lapped in a few laps time. A couple drivers running in the midfield that had some earlier incidences but are since then recovered. The 5 of Hubka has used a fast repair, so he is now battling back in the 14th position, is that 5 machine. I believe that Noah Owens is also taking a fast repair with that 88. He is making a comeback charge as well. Another driver in the middle of all this is the 90. That's Angel Santiago. He is a lap down and make that 2 laps
Caution.
down.
It's Christopher Lawrence, I do believe. Over in turn 3.
He is all by his lonesome down on the in the grass. I don't think he actually hit anything.
Or at least not with the front end, that's for sure. Might have gone for a very long slide down the back straightaway grass. But you're right, at least in the end result, I don't think he hit anything. So we'll go back and see what it was that led to our Daytona winner from a couple of weeks ago, bringing out this 6th caution of the night.
I wonder if these drivers are having some proximity issues, because this was another crash caused by 2 drivers that wanted the same piece of real estate, although this time it was between the 9 and the 25 of Chrysler. Chrysler looks like he, I guess, wanted to slot in behind the 9 and thought he was clear, but he wasn't, and then just clipped Lawrence. Lawrence spins down on the apron, down to the grass, and gets it to slow down before he hits anything.
Yep, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Might have thought he was clear, obviously was not. I don't know if there's anything to it, but observing practice, I saw a number of drivers making moves and darting back and forth on the front straightaway down there on that front stretch apron, and saw contact very similar to that, where it looked like the driver was clear and then just the slightest amount of contact would be made. So I don't know what it is here tonight. If these drivers, some of them may not have spotters up there letting them know if they're clear or not, but we've seen quite a bit of, I don't want to say communication errors, but certainly drivers, I think you said the word proximity, some proximity errors here tonight of not knowing if you're clear on another driver.
Christopher Lawrence has come down pit road again. He has spent the most amount of times on pit road, a total of 7 times he's visited pit lane, so trying to get that 9 machine back going. He is in the championship hunt. In fact, he came into this race in first place in the championship hunt, although the points got reset. Seed number 1 was the 9. And yeah, I get the proximity to another driver. I don't know if it's caused by looseness. These drivers have been battling some loose race cars, or the fact that maybe they're just trying to warm their tires up, or they just. And I think honestly, I don't think that the 25 thought that he wasn't clear. I 100% think that he thought that Chrysler was and at least in his mind he knew he was clear and he was going to come up behind the 9. I don't think that he intended for that to happen, although we've seen that happen so far this race where, especially coming out of turn 2, they just track up the racetrack and they don't really know that there's a guy there, and then they end up making contact. You think it might be because, unlike most tracks, this track just continuously goes to the left. Even the back straightaway is not a straightaway in the sense that it is more of a curve. So do you think that maybe that's messing with some of these drivers and they think that they can go straight and they try to run the back straightaway straight, but because it's curved, a driver against the wall is continually making a left-hand turn while a guy is trying to cut the course in a sense and run straight? Do you think maybe that's where some of these issues are coming from?
It very well could, because as we know, you're going to go faster in a straight line than you are on a turn when you are slightly turning to the left. And so let's say that we were at another track like Las Vegas where it's more of a straight shot down the back straightaway. More than likely, if that same move were made between the 25 and the 9, they'd have been clear of each other. So I think that is a great point there, that more than likely the 25 was projecting that Christopher Lawrence around his outside was going to carry a lot more speed, and that would have been a perfectly timed slot in behind, if you will, and just mistimed because of, as you mentioned, that left turn that you're making on the back straightaway. So maybe we shouldn't call it a straightaway. The back curveaway, that doesn't really seem to roll off the tongue quite the same way.
Back curveaway. I like it, though. We should patent it.
We should patent that thing. Hashtag back curveaway at Chicagoland Speedway. If you're joining us here tonight, folks, we welcome you into Flatout Racing Network's coverage of the first playoff race, race number 11 of the BackFire Sim Racing. We're running the First Page Media 200 here tonight, and we are about halfway through now. David Modesbaugh leading the way with Noah Owens on this restart. Corey Saucier, Zachary Kitzler, and DJ Daniel going to be your top 5. Matthew Robinson, James Cato, Ryan Sizemore, Kyle Gartner, and Simon Morrison, they're going to be the top 10. Playoff contender, it is official this time. James Santoyo got the free pass under this yellow. 20 drivers on the lead lap of 27 still running when we take the screen. Only one driver out of the race, as just moments ago, Shane Ledoux declared himself the first driver in the garage officially here tonight. Green flag back in the air, closing in on 70 laps to go.
And Chrysler did not get a good restart. He spun the tires a little bit, kind of stacked everybody up. They're going to go 4 wide, flirting with 4 wide. Didn't quite make it to 4 wide, but that could have been a very treacherous position, although the 88 looks like he might have gotten the worst end of all of it as he's gotten a piece of the wall going through turn 2. So Owens falling like a rock now as a lot of drivers to his inside are passing him, and a lot of championship contenders as well passing him. You've got Phillips, you've got Salvati, you've got Richmond, you've got a spin in front of him, and a big pile up on the front straightaway as a lot of top contenders were involved in this one.
And they continue to pile in. Vickery got a piece. I saw Stencil involved. I saw Simon Morrison. Zachary Kinsler got a piece. And there were several others. That's Kyle Gartner, playoff contender in the 49. He was collected up in this one.
Lawrence was in this one. Hubka was in this one. Santoyo was in this one. And he had just gotten back on the lead lap.
That's at least 4 playoff contenders we named off right there, and there could be others. Let's go back and see what happened. I think that this might have possibly started with the 25 of Kinsler, and he was one of about 4 or 5 drivers that elected to stay out under this caution when everybody else had come to pit lane for fresh Goodyears.
I'm going to tell you what, if they weren't 4 wide, they were awful close to 4 wide coming through turn 1, or make that turn 4. The 25 was on the top of the racetrack, and I think that he was just trying to stay at the top of the racetrack as much as he could was Kistler, but then to the inside, another playoff contender makes contact, and then they all stack up, and there's just nowhere to go if you're anybody involved in that track. That's where a lot of drivers are merging up to the top side of the racetrack. Worst place for a crash like this to happen.
Jordan Stencil did take a huge shot. We're going to go on board with him as the entire hood was ripped off of his number 64. And we've seen here tonight a lot of drivers just trapped up on that outside line, and you pointed out that they just can't seem to stop on a dime. Even if they're on the brakes, it takes a few hundred feet for that car to come to a complete stop, so a lot of these drivers are hitting these wrecks at speed.
Especially if you're at full tilt trying to slow down, and you see how loose these cars are, and you try to slam the brakes, it just doesn't work out as well as you want it to. A driver that really got out of this and might have saved himself with Brock Salvati, as he got a little help from the back end or the front end of the 43, but that might have saved him from getting caught up by the spinning Morrison as he came down the racetrack. He spun down to the grass, didn't make it onto pit road, so he won't get penalized for it, but just tiptoed his way around the grass and got out of it pretty much scot-free.
Whereas Saucier, as we're on board with him, just had nowhere to go. It was kind of hard to tell there if maybe the 25 felt the car was coming around on him and might have hit the brakes a little bit there in the center of the corner, because it looked like the closing rate was very quick for a split second between his back bumper and the front bumper of Corey Saucier, and it has sent Zachary Kitzler to the garage area. Jeffrey Vickery in the 21 has also now gone behind the wall. All three drivers, if you also include Shane Ledoux, that now have DNF'd, none of them are playoff contenders, and I think that, unless the car can absolutely not go any longer, Anthony, you're going to see your playoff contenders, battered, beaten, and bruised, just continue to soldier on, because they know every position that they possibly gain, if this continues to be a race of attrition, is an extra point, and that one extra point could be a huge difference maker later on down the line when we end up finishing up at tracks like Iowa and Talladega and Kentucky, as to whether you're going to be in that Final Four to battle for the championship at Homestead or not.
And we saw it already play a factor in who got into the playoffs in the first place, because it came down to a tiebreaker between a couple of drivers. So you never know. It could come down to something as simple as 1 or 2 points. And right now, a lot of the drivers coming into this race that were in the championship, well, they've had some pretty hard luck so far in this race, and we'll have to find out if they can at least hold on to try and make it. Some drivers that haven't had problems are DJ Daniel and Matthew Robinson, have pretty much, for the most part, remained pretty good. Now, these drivers have one fast repair they can use, and a couple of them have used it on this last incident. The most notable was Jordan Stencil. His car was torn to shreds, but he has come out with a very pristine-looking race car now, so only one that they can use at their disposal. This is the last one, so he's got to make the 64 cars last as long as he can. But these drivers at the front, people like Robinson and Daniel, I don't think they've used one yet, and if they have, they certainly don't look like they have, so we'll have to see if they've got another one in their lineup. Maybe towards the end of the race, they won't be fretting so much, knowing that they have something in their back pocket that they can pull out to maybe snipe away a win or even a top 5.
So far, been able to keep, for the most part, all 4 of the JKR Motorsports cars clean, as 2 of them will be your front row with Robinson and Daniel. Between the 2 of them, 6 wins this year. They're trying to see if they can have the tiebreaker here tonight, Chicagoland, as we still have 66 laps to race here at Chicagoland Speedway.
And look at who's coming up into third place, that 3 machine of Cato. He's got some pretty good speed going through these last few laps. He's obviously on some fresher tires. He's using them right now. Look at the inside line. Nowhere for the 99 to go. Robinson, he's going to try and get to the inside, but no momentum on the inside compared to the outside. And now, looks like Cato trying to go for
we got a wreck in the back there. That, I believe, was Santiago in the 90. He's collected up, I think that's TJ Roberts. Kyle Gartner, I think, may have been involved in yet another one. That car with the front end gone once more.
And that, again, was a very similar incident to what we saw earlier on, where I think it was contact that started off harmless and ended up very much not harmless.
Go back and see what happened here. 2 of those drivers, actually, 2 of those drivers off the lead lap, Gartner and Santiago. TJ Roberts was on the lead lap, and let's see how this one starts.
Actually, I think Salvati that started.
Oh,
this
you're
one.
right. Salvati and Saucier get together. But they continue on. It was then a stack up behind them, maybe of drivers thinking they were going to wreck, and instead they wrecked themselves.
So yeah, Savati got the apron, and like you said, it just stacked up from there. Contact was made with the 24, and then nowhere, absolutely nowhere for Santoyo to go as he goes up the racetrack into the, I think that was the 11, and then they just pounds the outside wall, and there goes Santiago into it, and that was a lot of hard shots for 3 drivers in particular, but I think the driver that took the hardest shot was that 11 machine as he got absolutely plastered to the outside wall.
TJ Roberts was up inside of the top 5 at one point in this race, but now he finds himself with a damaged machine. Don't know if he's got a faster pair still to lean on or not. He's actually pulling into his pit stall right now, so we'll see if he does have a faster pair to be able to keep him in the running of this, or if this might be night over, or at least have to sit on pit road and get a lot more damage repaired. I don't believe that I mentioned the driver that got the lucky dog under the last caution. That was Josh Anderson, and I believe Kyle Gartner would have been in line for the free pass this time, but with getting a little piece of that incident, I don't know if he'll be the lucky dog under this caution or not. If he isn't, it would be Patrick McQuaid, but we'll update you on who the free pass machine is, probably when we get ready to go back Green Flag Racing. While we have the opportunity, want to thank the sponsors here tonight for BackFire Sim Racing. JKR Motorsports, like them on Facebook and Instagram. Auto Ventures LLC, based in Hudsonville, Michigan. Premier used car, truck, and SUV dealer with the cleanest selection and the lowest prices. Visit www.avcarsales.com to learn more. Junior's Mobile Detailing, based in Marion, North Carolina. Simply the best. Find them on Facebook and schedule your detail today. And SimShots on Facebook, where you can find awesome photos for cheap prices. Still a long ways to go in this one, Anthony. We've had pretty short spurts here with our 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th cautions taking place in these last 25 laps. And right now, when we get ready to go back Green Flag Racing, we're still going to be in the vicinity of about 60 laps to go. So it's still a bit of a marathon for these drivers, but I'm not necessarily certain if anybody came into tonight with a long run setup, if this is a race that has worked out in their favor. I'm not certain if these drivers expected that the slick conditions we've seen were going to be a factor that would play out the entirety of this race, and so they had their car set up for the short run, or if some of these guys maybe had to change from a long run setup to a short run setup during the course of these caution laps.
A lot of drivers that I've watched tonight certainly look like they are set up for a shorter run. Case in point would be James Cato. He shows a lot of speed during the opening few laps, but I've noticed a little trend where if we get more than 10 laps into a run, his car starts to fade off a little bit, and he starts backing up through the field. It's not severe, but it is enough to notice. So I think he's hoping right now that this race kind of goes into a couple of quick bursts of speed and then slows back down to a yellow. So definitely have to look out for him. But for the most part, some of these drivers have gotten their car to at least a medium run setup. Ryan Sizemore up in the middle of the field. He has been slowly working his way up through the field. Runs now in the 4th position restarting. So he's got his car set up to, he might be a bit of a neutral setup where he's not the fastest, but as long as he can survive, he can stay up with these guys. Right now, the only driver other than Cato that is not in the playoffs represented in the top 8, so as far back as maybe even the top 10, as there's another driver not in the playoffs back there, that'd be the 78 of J.R. Miller. Not J.R. Miller, my bad, that'd be Modespa running in the one machine that rounds out your top 10. So for the most part, top 10, aside from 3, made up entirely out of playoff contenders. Green flag back in the air. And I don't think that DJ Daniel got a good restart. If he did, it certainly seemed like that Robinson got a better one.
Absolutely, got right up to the back bumper of his teammate, and now will follow him through turns 1 and 2. Looked like Zachary Woods may have been a little bit slow there on the start as well, but a good comeback run for Zachary. He got involved in an earlier incident, used his faster pair, and now he's back up here in the hunt inside of the top 5, unofficially in the 4th position as he and Sizemore were battling for the spot, and now Woods will take it out of turn number 4. Now it's going to be Robinson and Cato battling for 2nd place, and Cato might have the advantage on the top side.
Cato with a lot of speed going into turn 1. Does clear the 99 now coming out of turn 2. Can you get a run down the back? What are we calling this again? The
curve way. Back curve way.
The back curve
I
way.
can't remember my own hashtag.
The back curve way. Now going through turn 4. He does have a run. Can he get something to do the tri-oval? He's trying to look at it. I think he just got a little bit too close to Daniel too quickly. Had to back off a little bit, but certainly setting himself back up to go down the back curve way again. And now the inside of the racetrack goes Robinson. So maybe, just maybe, Robinson is starting to get worked back into his routine and trying to get to the inside to make the inside line work for him again. Because right now he's showing more speed on the inside than Cato's showing on the outside.
You saw right there as we're on board with 4th place Zachary Woods, DJ Daniel dove to the inside down the backstretch to be able to give draft to his teammate in the 99, keep him alongside of James Cato. So a little bit of teamwork going on right now between the 96 and the 99 machine, both trying to advance their way into the Final 4, but James Cato, he's having none of it. He says, hey guys, I'm not battling for a championship. I want to finish out the season with as many trips to victory lane as possible. So far, he's got 2, one in a points-paying race at Texas, and one in a non-points-paying race last week in the All-Star Race event.
And I noticed something that Cato just did that really stood out to me. He took Daniel all the way down to the inside of the racetrack and then darted back to the outside to make as much of an angle into turn 3 as he possibly could. And that's something that you'll see these drivers do. They try to make the guy in front of them enter the corner a little bit awkward, trying to get them to slow down, but it didn't seem like, whoa, goodness gracious, who was that just got on the apron?
Kyle Gartner, I believe? No, that's James Santoyo in the 79 that's coming to pit road, but that was right in front of the race leaders.
Yeah, a fraction of a second faster for these guys in front, and that could have been a disaster for our leaders, but we were able to avoid them. And again, trying to make the guy in front of you have a little bit of an awkward entry into a turn is a good way to have them kind of mess up and get some momentum coming out of a turn. But you saw that Daniel, he's really been able to put his car wherever he wants to without any consequence. I don't think there's many places that Daniel can't run on the racetrack right now. But Cato, you could tell he's faster. He just can't get the momentum because, you know, the old adage is the fastest part of the racetrack just so happens to be where another car is.
Yeah, not only that, but he's running in the draft of the 96, so might be dealing with a little bit of aero tightness. We know that the draft definitely comes into play here with the move we saw DJ Daniel and Matthew Robinson kind of work out earlier on this restart. You got 5th place running Ryan Sizemore, and it's really cool to be seeing him up here making the most of the situation. The reason being, there was a little bit of a message that went on in the BackFire Sim Racing chat earlier on. I think it was either tonight or yesterday, where he wasn't sure if he was even going to get to take the green flag here tonight because his iRacing account had expired. Now, I don't know all the details, but I think I know the reason why, but he did end up getting his subscription renewed. He is here tonight, and he's got a shot of picking up the win here tonight at Chicagoland. A lot of momentum for him. Had a great run at Daytona, 1 top 5 and 2 top 10s, and looking for his 2nd top 5 on the season.
While we were spotlighting Ryan Sizemore, a fantastic pass for the lead of the race by James Cato was made over DJ Daniel. Took him right to the wall, did DJ Daniel in defense, but Cato was able to prevail. Now the battle back on for the lead of the race as the two have swapped positions. Daniel trying now to get the lead of the race back from Cato. Both of these drivers look like they've got some pretty fast machines. It really depends on who's leading the race at the time, although Daniel almost got a piece of the wall, but he's trying to make the slingshot work. Doesn't quite get it to happen.
Yeah, DJ Daniel has been a force to be reckoned with during the regular season, but then when James Cato entered in about 4 weeks ago, Daniel has had his work cut out for him. These two have been battling each other for the last 3 weeks. It was between the two of them for the checkered flag at Texas Motor Speedway, and these two had a really good battle on a long green flag run in the All-Star race last week at Charlotte Motor Speedway, but Matthew Robinson says, hey guys, don't forget about me and my 3 trips to victory lane this season. He's up here along with Zachary Woods and Ryan Sizemore. And again, let's not forget what's on the line for guys like Daniel Robinson and Zachary Woods. An opportunity to lock yourself into the Final Four at Homestead, Miami later on this year.
Indeed, and right now, there are 2 teammates battling for what is effectively in a battle for the lead of the race, because right now, Daniel to the inside again, trying to make that momentum work. Can he make the inside line work this time, or does Cato get the momentum through here? There might have been some contact. If there wasn't contact, they were razor's edge from making contact, but do you think that these teammates, Daniel and Robinson, even though they're teammates, they're battling for a championship, and while it's nice for the team as a whole, you know that Robinson's not going to let up from Daniel just because they're teammates.
No, not at all. I mean, obviously there is an alliance there between the two of them. They'll bounce pit strategy off of each other. They may even work to try and gain each other a position here or there. But they know that the end goal for each one of them is to get their car to victory lane, get their car into the Final Four, because at the end of the night, there are no teammates. There's just that championship trophy, and you want to be that driver that's going to be hoisting it. And that was a great save there, just to give some credit to James Cato and DJ Daniel, because not only did Daniel have to lift quite a bit to avoid getting up into the driver's side door of the 3, James Cato almost brushed the wall off of turn 2 and actually had a heck of a save as he was loose off the second corner. So amazing that both these drivers are still up in the first 2 positions and battling for this race win, because they could have very well found themselves wrecked about 3 laps ago.
Indeed, they could have, and there was almost some contact between these two as well that could have easily sent these drivers up into a very compromising position. But for the most part, we'd remain green. There's a lap machine that they're going to have to deal with very soon. That'd be Simon Morrison in the 34 that they're going to have to get in an encounter. Looks like that Morrison's going to be a gracious back marker. Moves to the outside. That car pretty damaged still from earlier incidences, so just trying to wheel it around and finish in a pretty respectable position, but didn't seem to affect our 3 leaders, as their podium are within the same camera shot, and they're running very similar pace at the moment. Right now, Cato in the blue and black Camry versus DJ Daniel and Matthew Robinson in the team, and the 2 teammates driving the Chevy Camaro. Right now, the speed advantage certainly looks like it's in the Toyota, because that Toyota is being able to beat 2 Chevys, so. And I know that the people will say that there's really not a difference between these engines, but you gotta think that the Toyotas, they get their engines from TRD, and the Chevy provides the Chevy engine. So there's definitely some horsepower differences between these two and some reliability differences. So right now, those TRD engines showing that they can be very quick by themselves, as the teammates, as they battle for second place now, they're not catching them.
There's also some setup differences as well. These drivers get to adjust their cars to their liking, to their preference. And obviously James Cato has his car hooked up. Boy, that 96, I don't know what's going on with him, but that is at least the 3rd time he has hit the wall in the last 2 laps. And that now has Matthew Robinson all over his back bumper. And we just saw the 10 of James Jones come back onto the track. He actually was disconnected for the last 20 laps or so. I thought he was out of the race, but he's coming back onto the track, possibly to pick up another spot, because TJ Roberts, who is out of the race, is 3 laps ahead of him. So that's another point that Jones could pick up here.
Indeed it is, and that would be good. That's even though they're not fighting for a championship spot, he is. He's trying to get as many points as he possibly can, but that 1 point, we talked about that 1 point, everything matters. So he can, if he does get this extra spot, it could come down to a couple of late playoff berths to try and get into the Final Four. It's obviously not going to do much of a dent now, but we still got 3 races to go before we settle that Final Four out, so you never know. Anything is possible. And if James Santoyo stays on pit road, that could be another position that he gains as well, and that would do dividends to get him back in another position, because right now, Santoyo, no indication of coming back on the racetrack, and then the closest to him would be the 90 of Santiago, which is running, but albeit very off pace. But if Jones can get 2 positions, then that could play out very well later on in the playoffs.
Riding on board here with DJ Daniel, had the camera focused on him for these last couple of laps because he continues to brush the wall. Now he comes down about maybe a half groove off of the wall, but trying to see if he can find a little bit of extra speed, maybe some clean air, as he is the highest running driver on the racetrack right now, right up into that upper groove, kind of straddling that last seam to that last lane just before you get to the outside safer barrier. And right now, just based off of lap times, it doesn't look like it's gaining him anything.
Maybe it's the result of what happens to his setup on the long run. We were talking about drivers that may have a short and long run setup. It might be that his car starts out free but then gets extremely tight as the run goes on, because it doesn't seem like he's able to get off the outside even if he wanted to. He was running right down to the inside line for the majority of the opening laps, but now in an attempt to get a run down the straightaways, which he is getting, he is compromising a little bit of, let's just say, mid-turn comfort as he continues to brush with that wall. And that was a big shot he took to the wall. Doesn't seem like it's slowed him down that much, although Zachary Woods is licking his chops going, you know what, you keep hitting that wall, you might mess up once, and I'm going to capitalize and get a top 3.
Woods last time by was about maybe half a second behind. That has maintained despite the 96 getting up into the wall. And speaking of up into the wall, that was, I believe, Angel Santiago just in front of second place Matthew Robinson, and he nearly just wiped out the 99 off of turn 4.
Could have been extremely bad.
Oh, look at this. You talked about the 96 going into the wall. Wonder if that one shot, that last shot, might have caused some damage, or else maybe he's just coming to pit road trying to get some extra tires here. Obviously, these drivers would have to pit before the conclusion of this race one more time, so this could be the start of green flag pit stops. This is also the longest run we've gone into so far tonight. Our longest run up to this point was 18 laps, and these drivers are now out there making their 25th circuit under this green flag run. So we may be settling into a long green flag run for the conclusion here.
We almost had a caution. We are going to have a caution. The 10 goes around at the hands of Jeremy Richmond down the back straightaway, who noses it in the into the inside pit wall. Or not the pit wall, but the inside wall going down the back stretch.
And also the 79 of James Santoyo got a little bit of the tail end of that. I'll tell you who did not want to see that caution was DJ Daniel, because this is going to get him the free pass, but it will start him at the very rear of the field behind all cars, lead lap and lap machines. So a driver that was third just before that caution came out is going to be dropped all the way to the back of the pack and have to utilize the remaining 30 some odd laps to work his way back up to the front.
Now, this crash was a long one. This started in turn 1 and carried through all the way to the exit of turn 2, and then about a third of the way down the back straightaway. As I think they were just trying to get around the 90 machine of Santiago, and just they made some contact. I think that this really stemmed from the 8 not really being able to get the car woed up in enough time.
We saw that Ryan Sizemore in the middle of 1 and 2 made contact with Angel Santiago in the 90 machine. We're going to go on board here with Jeremy Richmond in the 98. And again, if we kind of watch this on board here and watch how the 10, James Jones, just kind of comes up the track there. We've seen this all night long, and again, we kind of contribute this to the back curve way that we call it here at Chicagoland. I think that was another case right there where the 10, he's counter steering a little bit, trying to tuck up in front of the 98, and was not clear.
Not at all, and almost got away with it all. And then, there was another driver that came in and got some damage. Who was that?
The 79, James Santoyo, was the driver that I saw that got that little last-minute hit into the back of the 10.
That might be day done for Santoyo. He's still on pit road. He'd already used a fast repair earlier in the race, and we were talking a lot about him earlier on, how he was coming in basically as a bit of a shot clock into the playoffs, and now he is Well, he's had a lot of bad luck since then, so that unfortunate for him. He's been in a lot of things that really weren't any of his doing. He just found himself at the wrong place at the wrong time. Did he? But and that happened at the front of the field. Sizemore was involved in that, so that could have happened to any of our leaders. Thankfully, it didn't to any one of the top three. Although Sizemore did get away with it, and so too did Zachary Woods. They managed to get away from it as well. And right now, James Cato still the leader of the race. You've got Robinson. Saucier now finds himself in third place. And if you're wondering how Saucier is in third place, well, you can thank Pit Road, because he had probably one of the faster pit stops that we're going to see tonight, a 13.9 stop, which is almost a full second faster than pretty much anyone else.
Yeah, his pit crew definitely on it, and who knows, this could have been the money stop. This could have been the stop that's going to decide whether you're going to win this race or not. And so, tremendous job by that 24 pit crew to get him out there for third on this restart. Now, I believe that the car you see just between the pace car and race leader James Cato, J.R. Miller, I think he came down pit road on the same lap as DJ Daniel. DJ Daniel got the benefit with the timing of the caution of receiving the lucky dog. J.R. Miller is going to utilize the wave around to get back in the lead lap, so we should have 15 cars on the same lap as leader Cato when we go back green. Chris Hubka stayed out, extra lap led for him, so he'll get that bonus point. He then came to pit road. If you're wondering where your playoff contenders that took the green flag here tonight are running, as we are closing on 30 laps to go, let's give you a little rundown of where they are currently positioned for this restart. Matthew Robinson is the highest. He's on the outside of the front row in second. Corey Saucier in third. Zachary Woods in fifth. Jordan Stenzel's had an up and down night, but he right now is in seventh. Christopher Lawrence is in ninth. Brock Silvati completes the top 10. Ryan Phillips is in 11th. DJ Daniel back in 13th. Chris Hubka in 14th. And J.R. Miller in 15th. Those drivers of your playoff contenders are all on the lead lap. Kyle Gartner is one lap down in 16th. Jeremy Richmond, who we saw just involved in that wreck, he's still on pit road, 3 laps down in 20th. Angel Santiago, who started this race on his roof, he is 21st, albeit 14 laps down. And 2 of your playoff contenders are now officially out of this race. James Santoyo has gone to the garage area. He'll finish 22nd. And James Jones, also behind the wall, will finish in 23rd. That's where your 16 playoff contenders are currently running at this point in time, as we're closing in on 30 laps to go in the First Page Media 200.
Let's not forget about Noah Owens either. He's running in the top 10 as well. I think he would have been appreciated. As we always forget that I don't know why, but we always forget that he's in the playoffs. But the green flag is back in the air, and to the inside of everyone goes pretty much everybody that can get to the inside, although back there we got battling between Woods and Anderson. Anderson will make that Sizemore. Sizemore on the outside of the racetrack trying to get that to work, although he had a bit of a bobble going into turn 3. Still with a bit of a bobble. He saves it, keeps it off the wall. Good piece of driving on the 8 machine.
Had a near moment there in 1 and 2 as well. That was, I believe, Jordan Stenzel that dropped back outside of the top 10. Right now scored in the 12th position. 3 wide back there. That, I believe, is Brock Silvati shooting up the gap. He had Ryan Phillips to his inside and Sizemore to his outside.
That could have been really bad. We've seen how 3 wide usually works at this track, and they almost went 3 wide again, but did not. DJ Daniel trying to make his way up through the field. He's now set his sights on Phillips, trying to get around him. He's actually going to split them 3 wide. Does Daniel. Hubka and Phillips on the inside line. 3 wide for a moment. Now back to 2 wide as they go through turn 1. Daniel on the outside line, trying to now set his sights on Brock Salvati. And trying to get around the lap machine of the 49 of Gartner, who is also trying to get one of his laps back. But so far as they run, Cato out front, Robinson is in close proximity to him, and Saucier now finds himself running in a very comfortable 3rd place, although with Zachary Woods just behind them, as those top 4 have scampered away from another battle between 5th, Anderson and Noah Owens.
Yeah, how about these two? Noah Owens and Josh Anderson both got damage in at least one of the first 3 cautions here tonight. And for the most part since then, they've kept their noses clean. That's why they're up here inside of the top 10. Anderson, after the hardships in the All-Star race last week. Noah Owens, a playoff contender, as you pointed out there. Solid outing here tonight, and kind of maybe a couple of under-the-radar drivers that we did not look at earlier on in this race as favorites to win, now up here with a shot of at least a top 5, and who knows, depending on what happens with these top 4, they could find themselves up in the podium by the end of these 30 laps.
Indeed, they could. Another driver that at least I, in my mind, had maybe written out of the equation until I remembered that he had a faster pair was Christopher Lawrence, as he's back up here battling for a 5th place position between these two as well. So a good recovery drive for the 9 team, trying to make anything that they can out of what happened earlier. Is right now side by side does Anderson and Owens go, and DJ Daniel, another driver putting down, would be Ryan Sizemore. So now Daniel set his sights on these top 3, or these 3 battling for 5th, but he's got a long way to go if he wants to get up to the lead of the race, and there's not a whole lot of laps left in order for him to do that.
Right now, DJ Daniel scored in 8th. Now, we only have 15 drivers on the lead lap, but since we went back green flag racing, DJ Daniel has passed 13 cars. Because remember, with getting the lucky dog, he had to start at the very tail end of the field behind lead lap and lap machines. He's going to take him 3 wide here on the top. Maybe this is why he was running the top on that last run, trying to figure out if there was something there. I think the answer is yes.
Absolutely, there is something there. He put him down like there was nothing. His car is hooked up on the outside line if he can keep it off the wall, and I think that he was forced to come down pit road early because of those couple wall shots that he took. But so far, now in 6th place, Anderson trying to stay in front, although I don't think it's going to be much of a fight because they're running 2 completely different lines, although Anderson comes up right in front of the 96. Where does he take the run? Does he keep it to the inside or the outside? There's a bobble between him and Daniel. Oh, they take him right down to the inside of the racetrack. That could have been dangerous, but so far Anderson at the line won't get, well, they were dead even at the line.
I think Ticker gave it to the 96. Wow, look at that, pinching him down. These cars are on edge enough as it is. I don't think you want to be blocking and pinching like that. But then again, we are closing in on 25 laps to go. We're in the closing stages, so I guess it's kind of push coming to shove now.
And that brought in Sizemore. He knows he wants to get back in. He's going to try and drive it in deep. Maybe try a bit of a crossover. Not going to work. A bit of a slide job. Although he's got some momentum, he might be able to get it to work for him. But now losing that momentum as Daniel was using the high line to his advantage. But this is bad news for Daniel because while he's been having to battle between these guys, the top 4 have been able to increase their gap back to the 96. It's now almost an entire straightaway back to the 96. A 4-second gap back to Zachary Woods, to be more precise.
Got a car on pit road. I think that might have been Gene Cato that smoked the tires hitting pit lane. You saw the smoke lingering there just at pit road entry. And yeah, here's the 4 that have pulled away. You could throw a blanket over them, but it is nearly 5 seconds from Zachary Woods back to 5th place DJ Daniels. You got Cato, Robinson, Saucier, and Woods. You've got 3 playoff contenders, 1 non-playoff driver leading that trio right now, closing on 20 laps remaining.
Yeah, and they're increasing their gap right now. It was 4.4 seconds back to what is now Josh Anderson as they continue to battle back here. I think that Daniel might have used up his tires. Remember, he came down pit road early. It's not that he has fresher tires, it's just that he has a fast car, but now he's in the mix with some of these drivers with slightly fresher tires, and the fact that these drivers, their setups have been working all night long. Now he's having to battle, and that's bad news for all of these drivers back here because the gap back to the top 4 is increasing still. It's almost up to 5 seconds now. Here comes Ryan Phillips. Where in the world did the 43 come from? And they're gonna save it.
Wow. Josh Anderson. What a say. Oh, we got another one looping it around back there. I think he kept it straight. Might have been Modespaw in the 1. Yeah, he gathered it back up. We still stay under the green, so couple near misses of a caution flag flying right there.
Goodness gracious. Sizemore made that Josh Anderson, by all accounts, should have been spinning, but somehow saves that machine and is now trying to get back up to the front of it. I think it was No, it wasn't Sizemore that spun. It was Anderson. I couldn't tell who it was. I was so mesmerized by what was happening. This is good for Ryan Phillips, though, because he's the beneficiary of all of that, as he's gotten out in front, now trying to run down the top 4. It's going to be a bit of an uphill battle, but he's got a fast machine as of late. His car looks like it might have been set up for the long run, and so he's going to try and use that 43 to his advantage.
Right now, inside of the top 5, looking back in his rearview mirror at DJ Daniel in the 96, albeit still 5 seconds behind the top quattro, the top quartet, if you will, up at the front. Battle's going to be for second place there, though, as Corey Saucier looks in his rearview mirror. The 99 of Matthew Robinson looming large, and while these two have had the second place battle brewing, the 3 is starting to check out. 7/10 between himself and these second, third place, but this changes it all. Caution is out. Jordan Stencil has spun it off the back straightaway and into turn 3.
And that is going to be good news for the likes of DJ Daniel, who is really wanting a caution to get back up to fight for the lead of the race, and bad news if you're any one of the top 4. This might have been a little bit of what we saw earlier, and I think he just slow spun it down the back straightaway.
It looked like very much like the Christopher Lawrence spin, that he didn't hit anything. Lawrence is actually in the same vicinity here. It's Sizemore on the top. Ooh.
Not sure.
Sizemore looked like he might have been trying to bump draft him there down the backstretch, but I'm not necessarily certain you can do it here. We've talked about the fact that this is a back straightaway where you are constantly turning left. So you hit that car just wrong, it is going to go around. So,
I mean,
let's take another look here.
It kind of looks like that there was a crossover attempt, because you could see the way that Sizemore he had a run. He didn't know where to take it, so he tried the outside. Then he dipped to the inside, and then I don't know if Stencil came down or if Sizemore didn't keep going left, because again, this back straightaway isn't really a straight, it's more of a curve. So I don't know. Whatever happened, Stencil got away with it pretty cleanly, but that might have been a block a little bit too much.
Well, it has definitely played out into the benefit of another playoff contender. Kyle Gartner, who was the first car 1 lap down, is going to get the free pass now. So we will have 16 drivers on the lead lap. We're going to see if we can get an onboard here with Ryan Sizemore. We're actually going to go inside of the 8 machine just to kind of see if he was holding the wheel steady in an attempt to bump draft, or if, to your point, he might have been trying to make a crossover move to the inside. This is off of turn 2. There's the 64 coming up in front of him. Wheel straight, wheel straight. He never really turns that wheel hard to the left, so I think what he was trying to do was line up the bumpers there with the 64, try and push him down the back straightaway, and it just didn't go right.
Didn't quite work out the way he was intending to, and unfortunately, it's just a byproduct of the way the back straightaway is. He had a run. He didn't know where to take it either, and you can't really fault him for not. I mean, you could go to the outside, but again, because the wall makes a perpetual left turn, it'll close on you, and if he comes up the racetrack, then there's no way for you to slow down in enough time. It was just a tough situation for both of them to be in, and I don't quite know if either of them really know what to do in that situation. But thankfully, on the part of Stencil, it was just a slow spin down the straightaway, but he has stayed on pit road for quite a significant amount of time. He is back on back on the racetrack now, but did, I believe, not lose a lap, so good news in that regard. Some interesting strategy being called out. Remember we were talking about Ryan Phillips. He's leading. He didn't come down to pit. Neither did Modespa. Those are the only two that didn't pit. We saw how fresh tires were. Do you agree with this call? We're still a little bit over 15 laps to go, or maybe just on the cusp of 15 laps. So, what do you think? Good call, bad call?
I disagree with this call, and the reason is normally when a driver in the closing stages of a race goes with this type of a gamble, they are basically thinking, I will finish higher than where I was running on these older tires. I'll be able to keep enough drivers in my rearview mirror and pick up a couple of spots as a net gain. He was running fifth when that caution came out. I don't see how he can maintain a fourth place position when everybody else behind him is on fresh Goodyears. So I think I would have come down pit road if I was anybody inside of the top 10 under this yellow flag. If I were 11th on back, then maybe I'd have gone with the gamble. But I don't agree with this call for Ryan Phillips here.
Especially because you've got some really fast drivers behind him as well. You've got James Cato, who once he got the lead never really looked back. You've got Robinson, Saucier, Zachary Woods, Lawrence now runs in 7th. Miller, Anderson, and Daniel will make up your top 10 as Daniel lost some positions on their last pit stop. But we're going to find out if this strategy pays off for Phillips. We've got less than 15 laps to go. Does it work? Does it not? What about Modespa? We never really considered what Modespa can do. Green flag back in the air, and look at the run that the one got.
He's going to maybe be able to clear the 43 when they get into turn 1, but now he may get put 3 wide. Robinson tried to shoot up the middle. Now Phillips is actually going to get out in front, but now he'll yield to the top side. Here comes the 3 of James Cato to the inside, and there's a wreck in the back. Josh Anderson up and over in the air off the nose of J.R. Miller. Big wreck on the backstretch.
That was a violent crash that just happened on the back straightaway. Up in the air did the 7 go, and a whole host of cars went with him, including the 34 of Morrison that also went around as well.
Josh Anderson was up inside of the top 10. I believe he and J.R. Miller were battling at the time for the 8th position, and a wild ride that started about maybe a third of the way down the back straightaway didn't end until that 7 came to rest near the entrance of turn number 3.
This, the way I just looked at it, it's another example of the back straightaway, or the back curveway, playing funny games with these drivers. Notice how a lot of the drivers in front were arcing it down the racetrack, not really running against the wall. And then you got back behind them, a couple of drivers that went down the racetrack trying to cut it into a straight line. And I think it was just a meeting of the minds.
That was Patrick McQuaid in the 73 that kind of had the 7 ramp off of his nose and get a little bit more airtime down the back stretch. And okay, I'm going to play a little bit more devil's advocate here because, we're talking about the fact that this is a bit of a curved back straightaway and everything and why that might be playing a part into it. There might be drivers here tonight that are not racing with spotters. Is there a blind spot maybe for some of these guys over their right shoulder, back around where that right rear C-pillar is, that they can't necessarily see if there's a car to their outside? Because if you look back at that replay, Josh Anderson, he shot that car up to the outside line as if there was absolutely no one there.
Yeah, I would imagine that there is a bit of a blind spot, especially that part of the race or that part of the car. You think about you're driving your regular car, your everyday car, and you have mirrors and everything, and you have that blind spot that's just to the right side of the pillar. And I've been guilty of it. I've almost hit some people not knowing that there was a car there just by product of I didn't see them in my mirror and I didn't see them when I looked over. So there is a blind, and especially when we talk about iRacing, you don't have the luxury of being able to turn your head back about 45 degrees to look to your right side to see if there's anybody there. In fact, you don't even get that in the real cars because your head's basically locked into a cage. So knowing that you can't see there, I do think that maybe he just didn't know that 78 was up the racetrack.
Well, we saw David Modespa roll the dice with Ryan Phillips on that last restart, but he has now come to pit lane and actually, I thought he was taking on tires, but might be a little bit more sinister than that. He's staying on pit road, so he might have gotten some damage that we didn't see there from that restart. Still sitting on pit road and now has fallen a lap down under caution. Ryan Phillips, though, continues to show the way, and maybe this was his strategy, have these late cautions come out and still be able to hold on to the race lead, but I still think with 20 laps difference on his tires to everybody else behind him, I just don't see how the strategy is going to work out, but at least for the time being, to his credit, it is working. The caution coming out, I believe, is going to put Simon Morrison as the free pass car. He was 3 laps down. I think he's going to get one of those laps back, as all drivers that up to this point were 1 lap down have now gotten themselves back onto the lead lap, and we have 15 of them when we go back green.
And we're going to go back green with about 9, make that 8 laps to go. Well, no, it'll be about 9 laps to go once we get the green flag, assuming we go back to green, not this time around, but the next time around. Phillips, Cato, Saucier make up your podium at the moment. Now, we've been touching on the fact that Phillips is out there kind of on one of the more ambiguous strategies that we have seen so far in this race. Zachary Woods and Christopher Lawrence back here, they've been doing everything right so far. They've been keeping their nose clean. Well, more Woods than Lawrence, but Lawrence has had a good recovery drive, and ever since he has been involved in a crash earlier on the night, he has gotten back into a position where he could very easily take a top 5, maybe even a top 3 if he gets a good restart. And a couple more drivers even back behind them. Noah Owens and Chris Hubka. How many times have we seen these two in the vicinity or sideways, and yet we still find them rounding out the top 10? Chris Hubka at one point in this race was racing without a front end, and now we find him running inside the top 10. So very easily could get a top 10 for that 5 machine. He's got the speed in order to do it, and especially for both of those drivers being Owens and Hubka, they're in a championship fight. So any position counts. This is a good showing for both of them.
Yeah, of course, down the home stretch here of the regular season, it is kind of taken me to school in the fact that in this league, you can't count anybody out until that checkered flag is waving. As you said, a lot of drivers there inside the top 10 now that ran into early issues here tonight in the first half of this race. Green flag back in the air with 9 laps to go. Ryan Phillips on that inside trying to hold off the fresher tires of James Cato on the top side, and this time not quite as good through 1 and 2 as he was in the last restart. Cato will be alongside, and he'll get that big run down the backstretch.
And he's going to bring Ryan, make that Matthew Robinson with him along the outside, although Phillips not really content to go anywhere at the moment, trying to hold it on the inside line, although I think that the fresher tires are just going to finally kick in for these drivers as they're leaving him in the dust. You've got Woods now going around the outside. You've got Phillips still on the inside. You've got Daniel going around the outside. You've got Saucier caught on the inside line. Now goes to the inside to get around. Now you've got Lawrence to the inside to get around. So that strategy, don't think it's paying off quite as well as he thought for the 43. Cato now with the lead of the race again. Got another...
Gracious. Ryan Phillips and Saucier nearly got, well, I think they did get together, and the 43 almost went around. Nice save, but it's going to lose him even more momentum and more positions.
And I saw the smoke in the background and thought he was going around, so great save, especially considering he's got some pretty old tires, and I doubt that that slide helped him in the slightest. Cato now with this this quattro of cars going down the back.
Oh, we got a wreck. Patrick McQuaid, no, he's on the pit road. It's Brock Silvati, playoff contender on the backstretch.
And that might send us to a green-white checker. Not sure if it will, but it looks like he has got some heavy front-end damage. Don't know if he was the only... I certainly wasn't the only one, and I think he definitely wasn't, as the 88 of Noah Owens might have been the reason why he ended up in the outside wall.
I think you're right. You can see the damage on the right front of Noah Owens' Chevrolet. Let's go back to turn 2. This was probably where it took place. A lot of our cautions here tonight have been in that vicinity off the second corner and down the back straightaway. We'll see if it was another case of what we've seen here tonight of miscommunication of space. No, I don't think so. I think that 97 was already in trouble before we even got to the second corner.
He was, in all intents and purposes, holding on for dear life coming out of turn 2. Sideways, very sideways, slid right in front of the 88, tried to gather it up, and then by the time he did, he slid right up into the 88. Ended up both of them hitting the wall, and Owens went to the inside. Salvati continued to the outside, and that's where his 97 came to rest. So he had to get going again.
It was a battle at the time for, I believe, the 12th position. Take another look at it here as Brock Silvati and Noah Owens, both trying to advance their way into Homestead Miami Speedway to compete for the championship. And this was not a case of one car coming up thinking they were clear on the other. That was the 97 of Salvati trying to gather up a spun-out race car, and unfortunately for Noah Owens, he was the one that kind of, well, not necessarily helped Brock Salvati from having that car spin out, but certainly was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Absolutely, and I mean, it kind of happened the same way that we saw earlier incidents happen, where after the car was saved, he didn't quite know where the 88 was, so more of the same, but kind of different. It's kind of like modern day pop music. It's more of the same, but kind of different. So it sets us up for quite possibly one of the most exciting restarts we're going to see on the night. I don't think that we're going to take a green-white checkered yet. We might finish this race in regulation, but we've got a lot of drivers that have fresh tires, and we got a lot of drivers that are hungry for this win. You got Cato, who wants only his second points-paying win of the season. You want Matthew Robinson, who really wants another win on the season because he's got multiple wins so far. He came into this race the 3rd seed in the playoffs. You got Zachary Wood that came into this race the 6th seed in the playoffs. He's looking to try and leapfrog and maybe bid his way into a good start to the Final Four. And DJ Daniel, who has finally, somehow, some way gotten through all the traffic, finds himself running in 4th place. Remember, he has a fast car. Everyone else around him also has fast cars, but he's been able to make that outside line, the extreme outside line, work for him. We'll have to see if the 96 machine can pull something out of his hat.
Yeah, one of the few drivers that has migrated up there and tested the waters of that, we'll call it the Larson line, or maybe the Dale Jr. line, because they seem to be the two bravest to be able to venture up there at the 1.5 miles, right up against that outside wall. Well, you talk about more of the same but a little different. That would apply to Simon Morrison. He is the lucky dog once again under this caution. The difference, though, he's now going to be 1 lap down rather than 2 laps down. In back-to-back cautions, he has gotten the free pass. There's going to be 21 cars still scored in this race on the track. 15 of them will be on the lead lap. We have 7 drivers back in the garage area. The most notable playoff contenders, James Santoyo and James Jones. They'll look to rebound next week as we head down the stretch towards that Final Four showdown at Homestead Miami Speedway. Next week, these drivers head to Iowa Speedway, a little bit of short track racing. Then we go to the high banks of Talladega Super Speedway, so you want to talk about a wild card race right in the middle of the playoffs. And then we go to the final 1.5 mile track before the Final Four. That's going to be in the Bluegrass State at Kentucky. And we've had a wild one here tonight. 12 cautions. Pretty much just about maybe 80% of our playoff contenders have gotten damage in some way, shape, or form here tonight, but there's still an awful lot of green banners and splitters up here inside of the top 10 for a restart. That's going to be what's the word I'm looking for?
In regulation?
Scheduled. In regulation. Thank you. A scheduled green-white checkered. Yeah, why did it take me so long to figure that word out?
It's been a long race. These guys, you get tired. Mentally, you get tired. So I imagine for, we talk about the drivers getting mentally tired, but, for commentators, it's not so easy either. So getting ready for a restart. An inbound green-white checkered. Still plenty of them on the table in case we need them. A lot of these drivers, their mindset is, I hope we don't need them, and especially if you're the leaders. Stacking up for the restart, green flag back in the air, and no one gave an inch, and we're already going 3 wide for the lead. Woods says, well, not make that, the DJ Daniel says, I want the outside line, give it to me now, but Woods says, I'll take the inside line.
Corey Saucy are going to split Robinson in the middle 3 wide as Daniel went to the top. Wood's going to take a look on the inside down the backstretch for the top position. He's on the bumper, but not quite there. Cato gets loose in the middle of turns 3 and 4, but hangs on to it.
That was a heck of a lot of oversteer, and it's going to pay. Nice! Saved it.
Wow, white flags out. They made it to the white, but barely. Cato pulls away. The battle will be for second. We got another car on the wall back there. That's Jordan Stencil in the 64, but we're still racing back to the checker. Brock Silvati in trouble off of turn 2. He hangs on.
And battle for second place is where all the action is Cato's pulling away. James Cato Out of turn 4 for the final time. He does it. He hangs on, and he's going to win here tonight. Somehow, some way, Cato holds on.
In the past 4 weeks, we've run 3.5-mile tracks. Texas, the All-Star race at Charlotte, and now Chicagoland. James Cato has won all 3. It's his second points-paying race on the year and only his 4th start of the season. And he has theoretically sniped away a guaranteed Final Four spot for a playoff contender in the first playoff race of the season.
He has indeed, and he did it in stellar fashion as well. He had a huge charge from the 60 of Woods, but he went all the way down the inside line. We were talking about how some drivers might try to drive a leader down to the inside line in order to get them a little bit of an awkward entrance, but it didn't seem to upset the 3 at all, as he was able to get a lot of momentum coming out of turn 4, and by the time he was down the front straightaway, everyone behind him had checked up enough that he didn't have to worry about anything.
It's the second win of the season for Spin Move Racing. You saw his teammate, Zachary Woods, giving him a congratulatory bump on the back straightaway. Woods going to bring it home in 7th place, so a good run for 2 of those team machines here as James Cato is becoming very familiar with doing burnouts here in BackFire Sim Racing as he gets to do some donuts here at Chicagoland Speedway.
And you almost have to ask, and I think you alluded to it earlier, a what if? What if he ran every single race? What would the playoffs look like now? What would anything going forward look like now? And I think we would establish that James Cato would probably have been one of the top contenders all season long.
6 of our top 7 were playoff contenders in the finishing results. The lone man out, the guy you're watching right now celebrating, James Cato. Matthew Robinson finished behind him in 2nd. DJ Daniel with a nice comeback run after a rather untimely caution flag trapped him 1 lap down on pit road. He was still able to fight his way up to a 3rd place finishing position. Behind him, Corey Saucier, another driver that kind of had to come back from some damage he got in the first half of this race, and another driver with another comeback run in Christopher Lawrence, finishing out the top 5. J.R. Miller, Zachary Woods were the other playoff contenders up inside of the top 7, followed by Ryan Sizemore, Kyle Gartner, and Ryan Phillips. So 7 of your playoff drivers up inside of the top 10, and 10 of them up inside of the top 13.
Yeah, a good run for these drivers that are in the playoffs, but not all of them are up there in the top 13. There are some drivers that have some hardships, including James Santoyo, Jeremy Richmond, who finished way down the order. Those 2 drivers had some pretty poor runs. And if you go down further, even still, some drivers that ended up with bad runs tonight. And some drivers that didn't even make the start of the race, but Shane Ledoux was the one that ended up with the hardest luck tonight, as he never really got his race started as he finished his 95 laps down behind the leader. He wasn't a championship contender, but you got to feel bad for someone coming into this race knowing that you had a lot going on, but the race kind of dealt you a bad hand.
Like 12 of our playoff contenders finished on the lead lap. Those that did not, Angel Santiago 19th, Jeremy Richmond in 20th, James Santoyo in 22nd, and James Jones in 23rd. So those 4 drivers especially will be looking to mount some comeback runs and keep their playoff hopes alive next week at Iowa Speedway. But James Cato, for the 2nd time this season, he will become the 3rd multi-time winner on the season, joining Matthew Robinson and DJ Daniel, the 2 drivers that he managed to beat here tonight at Chicagoland Speedway. And we're going to be talking to all 3 of those drivers here in just a moment and ask them their feelings about tonight's race here at Chicagoland. But when I looked at the schedule here, Anthony, and I saw Chicagoland, that was the one track that kind of stood out to me as a place where we would end up seeing had the best car for the long run, pit strategy, and all that play out. That wasn't necessarily the case here tonight. It was more the case of who could keep their car underneath them and keep their car in one piece.
Yeah, there was a lot of drivers that were struggling for grip out there tonight, partly due to the track temps, but also due to the fact that the setups that these drivers might have used tonight could have been set for a bit of a quicker run, a much looser setup, and over time that they would come in. But Whatever the case may be, it was a battle of attrition for these drivers. And not only that, but battling about where you were in relation to another driver on the track. That was the tale of the day where you didn't know if you were clear of anybody and you ended up might have getting involved in a crash that you wouldn't have if you maybe had known that you had a guy underneath or above you, and especially the back straightaway, or as we've now dubbed the back curve way. It's one of those places where you go at it thinking that it's going to be a normal backstretch, but it drives so much different than a regular back straightaway would, and it caught a couple of drivers out, especially when one driver had one thing in mind and another driver had something completely different in mind.
No doubt about it. I mean, we saw a couple of drivers actually get airborne here tonight as well, just based on the high speeds they carry into the corner, but not a whole lot of grip underneath to help plant them to the racetrack. Let's see if we can now talk with our third place finisher here tonight, three-time winner, DJ Daniel. Hey, DJ, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Sir.
All right, well, third place run here tonight. We saw you near the end of this race in the final couple of runs migrate all the way up there against the wall, running that third groove. Nobody else had been testing that all night long, and we saw as soon as that green flag dropped for the in regulation green-white checker, you jumped up there. Did you need a couple more laps for that top side to be able to come in, or did you maybe not quite get the jump you wanted to there when the green flag dropped?
I had a pretty good start, but yeah, I think I needed more laps to be able to make the top work.
Yeah, you certainly were able to make it work at the long run. A question that I had all night long is the track temps certainly didn't make this any better, but the cars around, maybe not yours specifically, but there was a lot of drivers dealing with extremely loose conditions. What was your car feeling like all night, and was it kind of a handful to drive all night long?
Oh yeah, dude. Felt really tight on the bottom. I just couldn't run the bottom, so I was like, why not, take hints from Kyle Larson and get up there and try to run the wall.
One thing that we pointed out was the only track really previously on the schedule during the regular season that we could kind of compare a similarity of configuration being a D-shaped mile-and-a-half track was Las Vegas, and you were the winner there. Was there anything from Las Vegas that you were able to apply here in terms of your racing style, the way that you set up your race car, or were they two entirely different tracks, and what was the key factor that made the difference, if there was one?
There's not really much of a difference, to be honest. I was using the brake on both and, cutting the apron on the front stretch to make up some time, and they both tighten up on the long run. That's another similarity.
So as we mentioned at the top of the program, 16 drivers come into this playoff system, but there's no rounds. At the end of 4 races, 4 drivers advance. A good solid start to your playoffs here with third place tonight. So what's the mindset going into Iowa next week?
Just don't wreck, stay out of trouble.
Well, you managed to do that here tonight, so maybe we'll get to see you do that as well next week and keep that momentum going. DJ, before we let you go, we're going to let you do some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
I want to thank Rocco Sign Shop, Junior's Mobile Detailing, Matt Rob Cuts, JKR Motorsports, and Max Graphics. Also want to thank my dad and family and everybody who comes out here to support me. And yeah, that's about it.
That's DJ Daniel. Starts off his playoff strong with a podium finish here tonight. Third place for the 96. Congratulations, DJ, and best of luck next week at Iowa.
Yep, thank you guys for broadcasting these things.
DJ is one of 2 3-time winners on the season, and we are now going to talk to the second one, Matthew Robinson. Matthew, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yes, sir. What's going on, guys?
Well, man, you got the season off strong with a win at Daytona. Tried to see if you could get your playoff strong here to start out at Chicagoland. You bring it home second place, though. Definitely looked like a lot of drivers struggled here tonight. We even saw that you kind of dropped back at one point in this race and had to make some ground back up, but you got yourself back up there into the top 5. You're there inside the first 2 rows on that final restart. What did you need to be able to at least keep with the 3 and then pass him?
Well, man, I've been I don't know what was going on, but I've been struggling with the restarts all night. I have no idea. Like, I just click buttons, but I didn't think it'd be that difficult. But I would always seem to lag back, and it would just never take off. But James, man, he was on his money. He was he was just hitting his line perfect every time. He was definitely the class of the field. But it was definitely fun with me, James, and DJ. That was a blast racing here at Chicagoland tonight.
You did have a pretty good run, a bit of a up and down run as you find yourself in a bit of some precarious positions. But a question that was on my mind for a lot of the race was the back straightaway, because it's curved at Chicagoland instead of just a back straightaway. We saw a lot of drivers get caught out on it. You seem to fare with it pretty well, but do you think because of the curve back straightaway, is that why we saw some maybe some of the drivers in the back of the field have some problems when it came to proximity? Because it certainly seemed like no one could stay off of each other going down the back straightaway.
Yeah, it's definitely got a good curve in it, and I guess most guys you expect to be on most tracks you expect it to be more straighter, but you definitely have more room back there. But I guess it has a little jet outs on the you know uh, at the end of turn two and the beginning of turn three. But yeah, I liked it. I could definitely swing it out a lot further than you normally do at different tracks.
All right, so Matthew, I asked your teammate DJ this just moments ago. I'm asking you the same thing. 16 drivers enter in, but only 4 are moving on at the end of these 4 races to battle for that championship at Homestead. You've got yourself a podium finish to start off the playoffs with second place here tonight. Next week, we go to a short track, so to speak, at Iowa Speedway. So now, having a good performance here to start the playoffs under your belt, what's the strategy going into that one?
Um, well, probably still the same thing. Try to get top five. I was pretty good at Richmond earlier this season. Ended up lagging out, but I was pretty quick there. So hopefully we can carry that over to another short track where we can do pretty good. Come out with hopefully a win, maybe a top five. But definitely looking forward to these next couple races. Not so much Talladega, but these next Kentucky, Iowa, and definitely Homestead. So those are my stronger tracks where you have to work the throttle a little bit more.
Well, we know you're good at the short tracks. You had that win at Bristol, so we'll see if that luck's able to carry over for you next week. Before we let you go, Matthew, we're going to give you the opportunity to do some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Jeremy Richmond with JKR Motorsports, and my teammates DJ Daniels and Brock and Jeremy. I'd like to thank Max Graphics putting all these paint schemes together. He's been putting them out almost every week now. It seems like. I'd like to thank Five Star Cuts, Main Street Auto Service, Auto Ventures, Juniors Mobile Detailing. They all help us out a lot with the team practicing and everything, and motivating us to do better on these Friday night races. It's been a blast this season.
That's Matthew Robinson. He gets his playoffs off started with a bang. Second place here tonight at Chicagoland. Congratulations, Matthew. Best of luck next week at Iowa Speedway.
Thanks, man. See y'all next Friday.
And let's now see if we can go down to Victory Lane and talk with two-time winner James Cato. Hey, James, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the booth. You got us?
Yes, sir.
Wow, I'll tell you what, after the last 4 weeks, I think we got to start calling you Mr. Mile and a Half. You end up winning at Texas. You end up winning in the All-Star race last week at Charlotte. And now tonight here at Chicagoland, that car looked like it was really strong, even cut its way through the field really nicely when you ended up playing some strategy there around the midway portion of this race. Looks like that car is pretty well dialed in at the mile and a half tracks. How'd it feel out there tonight?
Yeah, man. I'm kind of surprised. Like I've never really thought of myself as pretty good at the mile and a half. But I mean, I don't know if it's just the setups has matched my driving style, or if I've hit something at these particular tracks. But it's been a blast. I mean, I felt like I could do pretty much anything with the car tonight. Make the moves that I needed to make, and it was fun. It was a blast. That's probably one of the funnest races I've had in a long while.
You did have a pretty storied battle between yourself and DJ Daniel about midway through the second half of the race, and I gotta say, for what we've seen tonight so far, there was a lot of guys that are having some problems with figuring out where a guy was at underneath you and above you, and they were running into each other. But you guys got right door to door with each other, was able to hold on to it. Was your setup in a way that you could pretty much put your car wherever you needed to in order to do that? And more importantly, where did your car feel the most comfortable at tonight?
I felt the most comfortable in the bottom. And us being able to race door to door and get real close like that, I believe that's more of a mutual trust and respect between each other. Um, I mean, I know that he's going to race me hard, but he's going to race me clean. We can get close together, rub it a little bit, but 9 times out of 10, we're going to come out of it clean and straight. But I felt the most comfortable on the bottom. I just got good runs through the turns and down the straightaway.
James, obviously Anthony and I bounced off each other when you took this checkered flag here tonight, and I want to know if you've been thinking about it here as well after winning tonight's event. The momentum's definitely been on your side, but if you had made more starts, if you'd started the season a little bit earlier on in the schedule and made your way into the playoffs with this win here tonight, do you have yourself wondering what if? Because there's no doubt about it, with this victory here tonight, it looks like we would definitely be seeing you in about 4 weeks' time battling for the championship at Homestead.
Yeah, I've thought about it once or twice, but it's just not how things worked out. So I try not to dwell on it. I mean, I'm having a blast as it is, and if I was able to run for the championship, that would just make it that much more fun. I will say I might race slightly different because I'm just out going for wins right now. I'm not racing for points, so I probably wouldn't be as aggressive as I am now. But I've thought about it a time or two. I tell you this, I definitely can't wait until next season starts.
All right, so let me kind of bridge off of that point you just made there with the fact we're going to a short track of Iowa next week. You said you're going out there for wins. Do you have the aggressive style when we get there, or being a short track, does it change your racing style any?
Yeah, completely. That by far, short tracks by far is my weakest. I'm not good at them. I mean, as you can see at Bristol, I think I was involved in 3 or 4 wrecks. I mean, I was able to get up towards the front, but it was just all strategy there. You never know. Short tracks, you have late race cautions. You could roll the dice, play some strategy. You might end up coming out with a good finish, but I'm definitely not as confident going into next week as I was coming into this week.
Well, the confidence definitely showed here tonight. Very strong race car for you, James. Congratulations on becoming the 3rd multi-time winner here this season, BackFire Sim Racing. And before we let you go, we're going to turn the microphone over to you, let you do some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Butt Kicker, Black Gate Security, Splash and Go Graphics, AJ's Hot Shots, Sim Shots, Junior's Motor Detailing, JKR Motorsports, Auto Ventures. Once again, Flatout for broadcasting this, putting the race on. I have a blast going back and rewatching them. All the guys in the league, I mean, they're fun to race with. Grand Home Furnishing, my sponsor. This place I work at. So if you're in Virginia, Tennessee area, and you're looking for some furniture, look for Grand Home Furnishings.
That's James Cato, 2nd points win of the season and 3rd win in 4 weeks if we throw in that all-star race here in BackFire Sim Racing. Congratulations, James, on your victory here tonight at Chicagoland, and best of luck to you next week at Iowa Speedway and down the home stretch of the schedule.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
And that's going to conclude our coverage here tonight in the First Page Media 200, the first race of the playoffs at Chicagoland Speedway for BackFire Sim Racing. Certainly, no doubt about it, a bit of a wild card race in some respects for some of your playoff contenders. There were those that kept themselves up there in the top 10 all night long, but there were some of them that had to overcome some early adversity to be able to get some decent finishes this evening.
Yeah, it just seemed like the combination of the track temps and the fact that these setups were so loose for some of these drivers that it kept drivers staying off each other a bit of a premium tonight. We saw a lot of our championship contenders struggle, and we also saw a lot of our championship contenders get away pretty much scot-free. But at the end of the day, a non-championship contender won the race, and that just shows everybody that it doesn't matter if you're fighting for a championship or not. You go out and try to win a race. And I think James Cato is kind of the catalyst for what's going to be a bit of a wake-up call for some of these guys to say, hey, we need to start winning races if we want to get a shot at the Final Four. A lot of these drivers, some of them are mired back down in the seeding list as far as where they came into the Final 16. When they get down to the Final Four, you're going to have to work a lot harder to get there, especially because we came into this race with only 3 drivers winning a race to get in. So it puts a lot more pressure on those drivers that haven't won a race to maybe try to get a win before the cutoff.
All right, let's quickly talk about next week at Iowa, because we just talked with the only multi-time winners on the season, DJ Daniel, Matthew Robinson, and James Cato. And in order of those drivers, basically the translation of their focus at Iowa is be consistent, don't kill the car, and help.
Yeah, basically, you got a winning trio to live by if you're going through the rest of these races, because we got similar tracks we're coming up to later on the season, including Kentucky, which is about the closest to this track we're going to get. So if this race is any indication, Kentucky might be shaping up to be similar to this. So if you had a good car tonight, you might want to bring that car back when we go to the Bluegrass State.
Short track next week. We got the Super Speedway of Talladega next week. And of course, we know just a couple of weeks ago at Daytona just how much the Super Speedways play into not only the regular season with Daytona, but most certainly here in the playoffs as well in a couple of weeks' time. So very interesting tracks on the schedule. And again, it's not 16 down to 12, down to 8, down to 4 as far as rounds in the playoffs. It is 16 right down to 4 after the 4 races here heading into Homestead, Miami. So we'll see who's going to be able to continue this momentum on for the drivers that finished up there towards the front, if they can continue to finish towards the front in the upcoming wild card races in the next couple of weeks. And for those drivers that didn't do so well here tonight at Chicagoland, can they get themselves back on the comeback path in these upcoming 3 weeks? It's been a wild one here tonight at Chicagoland. A lot of drivers slipping and sliding around in the hot conditions here in Joilette. But Anthony, it's been a good one here tonight. A great opener for these playoffs. Looking forward to seeing how this story unfolds in the upcoming weeks. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Always fun to call these races, and it's fun knowing that there's championship on the line coming up very soon. So always fun, and can't wait to see how this championship plans out. It's looking like it's going to be a pretty good fight all the way to the end.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next Friday night as race number 2 of the playoffs for BackFire Sim Racing will be taking place at Iowa Speedway. Green flag scheduled to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us tomorrow as Flatout Racing Network is going to bring you coverage of the 3rd annual Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500. We're going to bring you all 200 laps from the historic 2.5-mile rectangular-shaped speedway of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Green flag will be scheduled to fly at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow afternoon. But for Anthony McCrory, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.